What if Bardock had seen the truth before it was too late? On the night Frieza erased planet Vegeta, Bardock was meant to die like the rest, defiant, furious, and unheard. But fate showed him something different. A vision not of his own victory, but of his son's. A future where Frieza fell, not by Bardock's hands, but by the power of a Saiyan child sent to a distant world called Earth. Instead of charging toward his death, Bardock made a choice that shattered destiny itself. He abandoned the battlefield, he abandoned his people's final stand, and he chased hope across the stars. This is the story of a father who refused to let the future happen by accident. A story where Goku doesn't grow up alone, where survival replaces sacrifice, and where Frieza's greatest mistake isn't underestimating a low-class Saiyan, but allowing Bardock time to prepare his son for war. What if Bardock had seen the vision of his son defeating Frieza before he went up against him? What if Bardock, instead of trying to defeat Frieza himself, had decided to go and find his son and train him so that one day his vision of his son defeating Frieza would come true? That brings us to our story. Bardock stumbled into the bar. People, listen to me. Frieza is going to destroy this planet. You have to get out of here. Several Saiyans laughed. Yeah, right Bardock. You sound like you need a drink. And you look like you've had too many. More laughs. Bardock growled. Listen to me. He stumbled as he had another V-zone. A boy, no, a man who looked like him was fighting Frieza. The man beat Frieza. The man was his son. He gasped as he came back from his V-zone. He now knew that someone could beat Frieza, and that someone wasn't him, but if he got to his son he had to leave now. He was running out of time. He stumbled out to the docking bay. He met resistance there. He said, "Let me pass." Bardock, go to that tanks. You're half dead again. Bardock knocked the man out of the way. When another man barred him he yelled. Frieza ordered the recall of the Saiyan infants sent off-world. Even if he did, you're in no shape to. Bardock pushed the man out of his way and blasted him. I'm going after my son. You can't take that ship. It's elite. See if I care. He blasted him too. He then got into the ship and pulled it out of station. Frieza wouldn't be able to sense his ship if it went into hyperdrive. Where did they send his son again? Wasn't it a planet called Earth? Computer, hyperdrive to Earth. Activate. He was slammed back in the seat and he blacked out. A week later, Bardock woke up. He had crash-landed on Earth. He felt better than before though. Some of his injuries had healed. Now, where was his son? His ship should have left an energy signature. He climbed out of his ship and clicked on his scouter. He soon found his son's ship. It looked like it had just crashed. Elite ships really were faster than standard ships then. He opened the pod. His son was screaming. Bardock put his hand over his ears and yelled, "Quit that. You're going to make my ears bleed." The baby looked at him. Bardock said, "Kakarot, I am your father. Do you understand?" The baby bit him. Bardock slapped him. The infant looked surprised. Bardock said, "If you want me to feed you, you better not do that again." Kakarot looked at him and laughed. Bardock dropped the infant on his rear. "Gross." Kakarot laughed. Bardock stress-marked. "This is going to be a long few years." He picked the baby back up and said, "You're coming with me." Kakarot came along them with few struggles. Bardock carried the boy under his arm and they soon came upon a stream. Bardock said, "Bath time." Kakarot started screaming. Bardock said, "You're going first." He dunked his son under the water and washed him and his clothes off. He then sat him down on a rock to dry out and got in himself. He scrubbed himself and his clothes and got most of the blood and grime off. He got out and said, "Now, we go hunting." 2 years later, Bardock had built a house in the forest and they lived there. "Dad, Kakarot, let's go." Note: at least for the purposes of my story, Saiyan infants mature faster than human ones when they are raised by Saiyan parents. Bardock laughed. "You think you're ready?" The 3-year-old cried, "Yeah." Bardock smiled. Today was the day of his son's first kill, his first hunt. They went, stalking a bear. Kakarot said, "I got it." He went off on his own. Bardock let him, but listened for trouble and monitored the situation with his scouter. He soon heard a cry of pain and a yell of rage. He went to where he heard his son scream. He saw a bear rising up with his son beneath it. Blood was coming from its neck. Bardock took the bear. Tears were running down his son's face, but he made no sound. Bardock held up his head and saw deep scratches on his face. Good boy. Already he is learning not to show weakness or fear. He said, "My son. Today you have become a true Saiyan. You have made me proud, my son." Here is chapter 2 for those of you who have been waiting on it. I hope you like it, and in response to some earlier comments, Bardock is a Saiyan, and among Saiyans it is seen as being weak to show emotion in front of just anyone, so he would teach his son this. Also, most of all their talk will be written in English, but they're really speaking in Saigo. I will also point out that, at least for the point of my story, Saiyan children mature faster than human children do. That is why he's acting more like an older child than a 2 to 3 year old. For any other concerns, you will just have to keep reading the story, although I don't mind you voicing them in a review. On to the chapter. Tears were running down his son's face, but he made no sound. Bardock held up his head and saw deep scratches on his face. Good boy. Already he is learning not to show weakness or fear. He said, "My son. Today you have become a true Saiyan. You have made me proud, my son." Kakarot looked up at his father. He had finally called him son. He had made him proud. Dad. Bardock said, "Go clean out your wound in the stream. I will prepare dinner." "Yes, father." Bardock smiled. Kakarot went off to the stream. He hissed as he washed out the cut on his face. It continued to bleed. He found a plant nearby and took some of its leaves with a mouthful of water from the stream and chewed them up. He put it on his scratches. It was something his father had shown him. It stung, but it stopped the bleeding. Bardock skinned the animal. He wouldn't use the fur to make a garment as usual because it was summer. He would make his son a necklace out of some of the bear's claws and sinew instead. It was ready when his son returned. Bardock said, "The trophy of your first kill." He held it out to him. Kakarot put it on. "Thank you, father. After dinner we train." "On what today?" Bardock could almost feel excitement coming from his son. He smiled. He had never seen someone so eager to train. He said, "Evasion maneuvers." His son's face lost some of its eagerness. "Ah, I thought you meant real training." Bardock cuffed him and said, "There is more to fighting than brute force, so there is more to training than strength training. If your enemy is stronger or smarter than you must fight them in other ways." Kakarot complained, "But evasion isn't fighting." Bardock said, "What comes after it is." "It is. How come you don't show me that?" "Because you're not good at evasion yet." Kakarot said, "Hopeful, if I get good at it, can we train for real?" "Yes, all right." Bardock said, "Now, I will track you. Go. You know the limits of where you can go." Kakarot ran off. Bardock waited 10 minutes, then went in after his son. He wouldn't use the scouter unless there was an emergency. He left it turned off. His son hadn't left any signs, so he tracked him by scent. He lost him at the river. He then crossed the river and looked again. There were still no tracks or signs of his presence until he saw some bark scratched off a tree, by what looked like a boot. He called, "I found you. Come down." No answer. He grew slightly concerned and turned on his scouter. No key signature on the tree, but there was one very close. Something jumped on his back and knocked him down. He twisted around to face it and met his grinning son. He said, "Good. Evasion and deception. What you did would work for an ambush if you had more on your side waiting or if you had weaker enemies, but not for stronger ones. You must avoid detection. Evasion training will continue, but now, physical training." Kakarot said, "All right." Bardock said, "You will train your tail today." Kakarot cried, "No tail training." Bardock said, "Yes, tail training." The boy held his tail. Bardock said, "It is your weakness. Weaknesses must be fixed, and so, you will train your tail." Kakarot said quietly, "But it hurts." Bardock turned around. "What did you say?" Kakarot winced. Bardock said, "It hurts, you say." He yelled, "Do you ever admit pain to the enemy? But you're not my enemy. When I'm training you I am. Do you ever admit to pain? No. Do you ever do anything to show weakness? No. Good boy. Now, on to your training." Bardock grabbed his son's tail and picked him up by it. He went limp for a moment, then he tried to attack. He managed to scratch Bardock's arm. Bardock squeezed harder and his son passed out. He was improving. He let go of his son's tail and carried him back home. Close to their home, Kakarot woke up. He asked, "Are you my father again?" "Yes." "Did I do good?" "You met my expectations." "Yes." "Did I do good?" "You met my expectations." Kakarot asked, "Where are we going?" Bardock said, "Home to eat." "But we didn't do any real training." Bardock said, "We will do sparring training only for a half-hour each day until you get better at everything else, understood?" "Yes, father." They went home. 3 years later, Bardock had begun to think that they wouldn't even be searched for. He had expected more from Frieza than that. His son was 5 years old now and he was in an exploring mood. He had promised to take him along to town this day. The boy hadn't been with him to town since he could defend himself decently, around age 1 or so. Kakarot: "Yes, father. You must control yourself when we arrive. You will behave when we go to the town." "Yes, father." Bardock half smiled watching his son having trouble containing his excitement. He looked at his face. The scratch of 3 years ago had become a scar very similar to his own. He wondered again of the fate of his elder son and of his prince. Would Frieza have killed them? If he was in Frieza's place he would have, but the lizard was twisted. Who knew what he would do? He was interrupted out of his thoughts by his son. "Father." "Kakarot, what are you thinking?" "None of your business. Are you ready to go?" "Yes." "Are we going to fly?" he asked, hoping that they would. Bardock said, "Yes, yes." Bardock smiled. "How good are you at flying?" "Good." Kakarot answered somewhat hesitatingly. Bardock said, "Let's see. The town is north of here. You start off." Kakarot looked at him. Bardock said, "Let's races." Kakarot grinned. "Okay." He hovered, then took off. Bardock followed him and heard his son laugh. Bardock smiled. He was innocent still, unusual for a Saiyan his age. They were soon at the town. Kakarot looked around in wonder. He asked, "What is all this? What is that thing? What is that one wearing? Is that a female? How come nobody else has a tail? What are those house-like places? How do they make it different colors?" Bardock sighed. He knew this was coming. That's why he put off taking his son to town. His son was full of curiosity. He said, "This is a town. It is a place where a lot of people live. That is a horse. That one is a female and she is wearing something called a dress. No one else has a tail because they're human, not Saiyan. The house-like places are called stores and they are different colors because they are painted." Kakarot let out a new flood of questions. Why do a lot of people live here? What is a horse for? Do all females look like that? What's a human? Why are they different? What's a store? What's painted mean? Bardock stress-marked. He said, "Humans like to live in big groups. A human is like a Saiyan with no tail. A horse is for transport, like a ship. Females look more or less the same. Stores are places where a person exchanges something that one has for something one wants. Paint is basically man-made color." Kakarot said, "Oh, how come I don't understand what they're saying?" Bardock said, "Because you can only speak Saigo and they're not speaking Saigo. Enough questions for now. Be silent and observe." Kakarot watched as they went to several stores and his father gave men pieces of metal and paper and they gave him things. He asked, "What's in those bags? Is it food?" Bardock said, "Not yet. These bags are full of seeds. Seeds. To make plants with. I'm going to plant a fields. We have to eat more than meat." "Oh." Bardock handed a bag to his son and said, "Don't lose any. They are important." "Yes, father." Fair merchants knew Bardock and treated him with respect. It made Bardock wonder sometimes if the humans could sense ki or auras at least. The merchant asked, "Is that your son, Mr. Bardock? He looks just like you." "Yes, he is my son." A woman barged in yelling, "Thessa." The merchant said, "What's wrong, diary? I thought I saw." She tapered off when she saw Bardock and looked down. She looked at both Saiyans and then back down. She said, quietly, "There are 2 of him." Bardock smiled. "Diary, this is my son." She looked up at him. "You have a son. Where is his mother?" Bardock frowned. "You get too personal, woman. His mother is dead." She looked ashamed. She said, "Oh, Bardock, I'm sorry." Suddenly explosions and screams were heard. Bardock jerked his head toward the direction it sounded like they were coming from. He said, Kakarot, stay here. No, I said stay. Kakarot cried. No. Bardock yanked his Saunt's tail hard, which knocked him out. He said, watch him, Thessa. Yes, Mr. Bardock. Diary said, I'm coming too. Bardock said, don't get hurt. He took off in the air and she took off on her airbike. In town, there was one of Frieza's soldiers. He didn't recognize the guy. Frieza had a lot of soldiers. He said, what are you doing? The soldier turned around. Bardock. I am Bardock. Why hasn't the population here been destroyed? It was assumed that your son had failed and I was sent Frieza. He thought you were dead. I've got to tell him. Bardock said. No you don't. He snatched the scouter from the man's face and crushed it. The man looked startled. What are you doing, Bardock? How many more of you are there? He said. A squad. Frieza thought a squad of 3rd class should be sent in since an infant was defeated, but by what I've seen so far, I don't see how that happened. Bardock thought. 4 3rd class. I can handle them. He demanded. How many ships? Only 1. Good. Where is it? The man looked at Bardock again, suspiciously this time. What are you up to, Bardock? You're acting strangely. Did your ship get damaged and you want a ride back? If you want that, go and finish your son's mission. It shouldn't take very long, especially for you. Bardock growled and picked the man up by the throat and started choking him. The man looked at him with wide eyes, still not understanding what was going on. Bardock said, I would rather you put up a fight before I kill you. He dropped the man disgusted. Soon the man's teammates showed up. He didn't recognize them either, but he saw the man's tail unfold and saw the others. They were all Saiyans. He had expected it was so. He said, you fools. You fight for the lizard that destroyed your world. A female said, but, it was an asteroid. Frieza said. Bardock said, I warned you. Remember. They thought back. Bardock gave them a few minutes, then he said, we may be the only Saiyans left. I don't want to kill you. I want our race to survive. Join me against Frieza. They looked at him. The older female said, you're loyal to this planet, Bardock. That must be why you haven't completed your son's mission. Bardock said, this is my new home. The leader said, this mudball doesn't matter. Bardock, you mean to tell us that Frieza destroyed planet Vegetase? Bardock said, yes. Why? We all worked as soldiers for him. He's thousands of times as powerful as us at least. Bardock said, he fears us. He fears that one day a Super Saiyan will Frieza and defeat him, so he killed us off. Super Saiyan is just a legend. It is real. How do you know? He looked at Bardock frightened. You have not achieved it. If there was anyone likely other than the king, it was Bardock. Bardock said, no, I have not achieved it, but I had another vision. It was the reason I left instead of facing off Frieza. I saw my son, as a Super Saiyan. He's alive, yes. The leader said, in any case, if your vision is true, it is years in the future. Also, we will believe nothing until we see proof of your claim. Bardock said, fair enough. It is recorded on my ship's video log. Come. They followed him. Diary had been following Bardock the whole time silently, not understanding a thing. When she got close to Bardock, she hissed, Bardock, what are you doing? These people killed dozens of our people. Are you making friends with them? Bardock said, I am trying to keep them from killing the rest of the population of this planet. Now, be silent. You know nothing of what is going on. Diary looked hurt for a moment, but decided she would still follow. If Bardock hadn't told her to leave, he probably still wanted her there. They walked on, following Bardock to his ship. Kakarot woke up with a growl. Why does he do that? I hate it when he does that. The woman who was behind the table thing was saying something and trying to keep him here. He got past her and went after his father. He found him and landed. Father. His father and 5 strange people turned to look at him. The other Saiyans looked back and forth between Bardock and Kakarot. The older woman said, your son. The younger man said, it's amazing. He looks just like him, right down to the scar. Kakarot looked at his father. Bardock said, I told you to stay. You didn't listen. I thought there was a battle. Bardock said, Nevertheless, you disobeyed me. Yes, father. He controlled the winds. He would not show emotion in front of these strangers. He turned and braced himself for the tail pull that would be his punishment. Bardock yanked his tail, but not as hard as he had expected. He only felt a little pain, nowhere near what he usually got for disobeying. The usual punishment made him black out. Two of the Saiyans whistled and rubbed their said, "You might as well remain with us now that you have come." Kakarot turned and said, "Yes, father." He controlled a smile. The leader said, "You couldn't have pulled his tail as hard as it looked like you did. He would have passed out." "Not my son. I don't believe it." Bardock smirked. "Then how about I pull your tail as hard as I pulled my son's? I promise that I will only pull yours as hard as I pulled his." The man frowned, then said, "Fine." Bardock pulled the man's tail. He yowled, "What the hell?" The older woman whistled and said, "I believe you, Bardock." The other Saiyans agreed. She said, "You've got a tough kid, Bardock." Bardock said, "Each day he grows in strength, and when he is grown he will defeat the lizard." He paused. "Come, follow me." He lifted up a false mat of leaves and branches. There were steps that they waked down. Bardock turned on a light to reveal his ship. "You've kept it in good shape. I had expected Frieza to send someone after me." He opened the door and said, "The communication equipment has been disabled, but here is the video log." He typed some on the computer and brought it up. "Watch." The Y watched an energy orb engulf a planet and watched it explode. The younger woman asked, "How do we know that was planet Vegeta?" Bardock took the log back an hour and showed them planet Vegeta's main docking bay. The explosion played over again. Bardock asked, "Did that look like an asteroid to you?" The group looked stricken. The leader said, "I must talk to my squad." Bardock nodded and the man went over to the corner of the room. Bardock said, "Son, you know that we are Saiyans and that we come from a different planet than the one we are on." Kakarot nodded. Bardock continued, "And I have told you stories of our home planet Vegeta." Kakarot said, "But it exploded. It's gone now." Bardock answered, "It was destroyed nearly 5 years ago." "What happened?" Bardock said, with a scowl, "A monster named Frieza destroyed it. He destroyed the planet and killed almost all of our people, including your mother." "I had a mother. Yes, she was beautiful." Kakarot sniffed, then yelled, "How dare he kill her and our people and our planet?" Bardock felt his son's power level spike for a second, then go back to normal. He said, "He did it because he is evil." Kakarot said, "We have to kill him." Bardock said, "I agree, my son, but not yet. We are not strong enough yet. Frieza is much stronger than you or me." Kakarot asked, "Stronger than you?" "Yes, that is why we train." Bardock, the leader, followed by the rest of them said, "We believe you, but what would you have us do?" "Frieza will come himself and then we will all die, if we defy him." Bardock shook his head. "He will not come for many years himself, and he will not send others if he is given a false report that is well thought out." "What if he checks?" "He won't." "How do you know?" "I know how Frieza operates, and I saw him come." He touched his head. They looked at him, wavering. One said, "You had a vision that your son would turn Super Saiyan and defeat Frieza. He was born with a below-average power level." Bardock said, "If you don't believe, stay and train, help us beat him." "I will train myself. Frieza will die by Saiyan hands." He saw this idea appealed to them. The leader said, "Fine, here's the deal. If you can defeat all of us, we will accept you as our leader and swear off loyalty to Frieza and swear our loyalty to you. If you cannot do this, then we finish this mission and go back to Frieza." Bardock nodded. "Fair enough. We will go outside." They went out of the cave. Bardock turned to Diary and said, "Stay in the shadows of the cave, it will be very dangerous when we fight." "You're going to fight all of them?" "Yes, stand back." Bardock, "I will be fine, woman. Worry about yourself." Diary huffed, but still was concerned for Bardock. Bardock said, "Kakarot, you keep your distance from the fight as well." "Ah, this is a closed battle." "Yes, father. May I look around in the cave?" "Don't touch anything." "Thank you, father." He went back into the cave and Diary followed him. He explored around in the ship, found some shiny things and put them on. He heard a loud boom and raced back outside to watch the fight. Diary thought, man, that kid's quick. Wait up. Kakarot watched as his father fought and defeated all four. Father was so strong. How could anyone be stronger than him? The leader said, you must have a title since you will be our new ruler. Another one agreed, yes, a title. They turned to themselves. Master Bardock, that sounds right. Yeah, that sounds good. Diary had watched the whole thing. She asked, Bardock, what just happened? Be silent. Diary was quiet, but aggravated. She sensed this was a bad time to take it up with Bardock, though. Bardock said, I accept your pledges and my title. Report. The leader reported first, Ramen third. Bardock interrupted. There's no point to having a class ranking system here, so there will not be one. You shall report as such. Officer Ramen reporting. Ramen nodded and said, Officer Ramen reporting, Master Bardock. Bardock nodded slightly. The younger woman asked, are we all officers? Bardock nodded. The four of you are. Future children shall be soldiers until deemed worthy of being an officer as an adult. They nodded again and continued. Officer Bana reporting, Master Bardock. Officer Collab reporting, Master Bardock. Officer Solari reporting, Master Bardock. Kakarot grinned up at his father. This was an interesting new game. He asked, what am I? How do I do it? Bardock half smiled. You would say, Soldier Kakarot reporting. The boy grinned again. Soldier Kakarot reporting. Bardock smiled in return, then said, first, you must run the scenario, then we will work on finding quarters for you. They nodded. Bardock said, listen closely. He told them his plan. Meanwhile, Kakarot watched the human woman. He said, with a smirk, you don't understand what they're saying, do you? Diary said, annoyed, of course I do. Kakarot asked, smirk still in place, then what are they saying? She threw up her arms with a frustrated sound. Fine, I don't understand them. Then she paused, surprised, wait, I thought you didn't speak English. Kakarot didn't respond for a minute, confused, how did she understand him? He said, I don't. Diary insisted, but you are. Kakarot frowned, no I'm not. Father. Bardock went over. He had just finished explaining his plan. What? Kakarot pointed at Diary and said, a little panicked, I understand her. Bardock looked at his son and then at Diary. Then he frowned as he took a device from his son's ear and neck. It looked like a collar and an earphone. Where did you find this translator? Find what? What's a translator? Bardock stress-marked. It's a thing that makes you understand and be able to speak the language of anyone who speaks to you. Oh, where did you find it? The ship. Can I keep it? Bardock thought. It is an elite ship. I wonder if there are any more of those in there. He would check into it later. You may keep it unless you misbehave. Thank you, father. Kakarot put them back on with a mischievous grin. Bardock said, however, you will learn the language. Kakarot nodded. Bardock said, now, we will be talking. Diary, will you show my son the town? Diary nodded. She was getting bored anyway. Come on, kid. Kakarot cried. I'm not a kid. I'm a soldier. Diary rolled her eyes. Come on, soldier. He followed her. Once they were gone, Ramen said, I don't understand why you're so nice to that human female. Solari asked, is she your mate or something? Bardock narrowed his eyes. She is not, but if she were, would it be any of your business? The woman's eyes widened and she bowed at the waist. Sorry, Master Bardock. I did not. Bardock interrupted. No, you did not think. Rise. Bana said, it is our business, if we are to keep the Saiyan race alive, Master Bardock. She added as an almost afterthought. She didn't want Bardock mad at her too. Bardock looked at the females. He said, I have thought about that. We will discuss that after the false scenario that you will give Frieza. Now, listen. As Bardock discussed the plan with the other Saiyans, Diary was showing Kakarot the town. Hey, kid, Kakarot growled. I'm not a kid. Well, I can't go around calling you soldier in town. What should I call you? Kakarot said, only partially mollified, Kakarot. Diary smiled despite herself. The boy definitely had his father's pride. Okay, Kakarot, have you been to town before? Yes. How many times? Diary asked, surprised. 1. When? Today. Diary sweat dropped, then stress mark, moron. Kakarot looked surprised, then angry. He cried, you can't call me that. Diary thought, I wonder what that translates to. Yes I can. Kakarot growled, who do you think you are? He jumped on her and they fought. Kakarot hadn't learned energy techniques yet, so it was hand to hand. Diary thought, this kid is strong. Stronger than me, but with little strategy. She used that to fight him. After a couple of minutes of getting nowhere, then starting to lose, Kakarot yelled, I don't understand. You're a human, how are you beating me? Diary said, you're not using any strategy. You're just trying to win by brute strength. That hardly ever works, you know. Kakarot looked at her. Maybe father's right. I do need the other training. He said, I see why my father likes you. What? I accept you as mother. What? Diary cried. Kakarot grinned. Come, you are going to show me the city. He ran ahead. Diary stood still for a moment, trying to figure out what just happened, then shook her head. The kid was as hard to figure out as Bardock, who would kill her if something happened to him. Wait up, kid. She ran after him. He said, you're slow. Diary stress marked. Brat. He grinned, then asked, what is that? He pointed. A car. It is a strange ship. Diary thought, does car translate to ship? She asked, what's that noise? She heard a loud growling like what came from a large animal. She looked around. Kakarot said, I'm hungry. Diary sweat dropped. That was his stomach growling. You're hungry. Yes. Diary sighed. If the kid was anything like his father, she was going to be broke at the end of lunch, but, okay, we'll go to a restaurant. Come on. He followed her. What's a restaurant? Diary stress marked. A place where food is. Oh. They kept walking and finally got there. It was a restaurant Diary had been to with Bardock a few times, so they were noticed fairly quickly. Hello Diary. He paused. Bardock. Diary said, this is his son. His son. He looked at her and she blushed fiercely then yelled, not by me. He came here with him already. Oh. He only looked slightly embarrassed. Everyone in town knew Diary had a thing for Bardock, it was a small town after all. He said, I bet he has Bardock's appetite. What happened in town? Bardock saved us all. The man nodded. He said, I thought it was something of that sort. In that case, breakfast is on the house, for you two Diary. Thanks. Kakarot asked, what is on the house? Diary said, it's an expression. It means that it's free. Free. Diary stress marked and yelled, free means you don't have to pay for it. Oh, I still don't understand, though. Diary sweat dropped. This is his first time in town. The man nodded, then soon left. After a shorter time than Diary had expected, the food was ready and served. Diary said, slow down, kid. Why? She was about to say because he would choke on something, but saw that highly unlikely after seeing Bardock shovel it in without harm. Because a soldier should have better manners. What are manners? Diary groaned. She said, you use chopsticks to eat with if you have manners. Kakarot opened his mouth and Diary put a pair into his hand. Watch me. She took a bite then he tried to copy her. Not quite. She repositioned them in his hand after watching him hold them and he tried again. Better. He started shoveling in food with the chopsticks. Diary sighed. At least he isn't eating with his hands anymore. After a table full of plates piled up, the boy finally announced himself full. The owner came back to the front. He laughed. He has Mr. Bardock's appetite, that's for sure. Diary said, yes, he does. Kakarot said, I want to see a horse. Why? Diary asked, suspicious, you can't eat a horse, you know. I'm not going to eat it. The owner said, take him out to see thunder. Diary looked at the man with surprise, you mean that horse that tried to kick Will in the head? That one. They'll probably get along. I don't know. Kakarot cried, let's go. He ran ahead and Diary ran to catch up again. She thought, the runt actually going slower this time. She caught up. Why don't you let me lead? You don't know where you're going. I can smell horses this way. Diary sniffed. I don't smell anything. Maybe you have a bad nose. She cuffed him without thinking. Brat. I do not have a bad nose. He looked at her in surprise, Then he said, "Sorry, mother." "Why?" He ran ahead again. He yelled, "Come on." Diary sighed and ran after. Kakarot watched the horse in the ring, watched him scream and kick and bite. He ducked under the bar and entered the ring. The horse saw him and ran over, charging. Kakarot sidestepped and the horse ran into the bars. The horse shook his head and focused back on Kakarot. Kakarot swung up by the mane and held on with that in his legs. He said in a low voice, "You listen, horse. I'm in charge here." The horse tried to bite him and he smacked it, "Bad horse." The horse just stopped and turned his head to look at the boy in surprise. Kakarot locked eyes with the creature. He smiled slowly, "You are a brave horse. How fast are you?" The horse snorted and Kakarot felt him tense. He held on harder. The horse ran around in circles for a bit, then he jumped the bars. Kakarot cried out in excitement and they ran into the woods. The horse kept on until it was tired and then they stopped at a stream. Kakarot got down. He said, "You're not as fast as me, but you were still pretty fast. I've decided I like you, horse. You need a better name. How about Cherisu?" The horse snorted. They both drank water from the stream. A few minutes later Diary caught up. She yelled, "Don't just run off like that." Kakarot replied innocently, "Cherisu wanted to run." Cherisu, the horse's new name. It means fire eater. Diary and the horse exchanged a glance. She approached him with caution. He snapped at her and Diary backed away, nervous, but not scared, she told herself. Kakarot laughed. He went over and jumped on. "Let's run back, Cherisu." They took off again. Diary sighed. What was she going to do with that kid? She followed them back to the stable. The horse was lathered. Kakarot got off. The handler said, "If you're gonna ride a horse, you have to take care of him. You have to walk him after you ride him, so he'll cool down and you have to brush his coat." "How?" Kakarot followed the man and watched what he did to his horse. Then he did the same to Cherisu. Cherisu snorted. "You like that, don't you, Cherisu?" Cherisu snorted again. The handler walked over with a hand out. "You've tamed him." Cherisu bit at him and Kakarot laughed. The handler drew his hand back in surprise, then laughed. "You two seem to get along well, at least. Why don't you keep him?" Kakarot grinned. "Hear that, Cherisu? You get to come home with me." The handler gave him a brush to take and the boy put it in his pouch at his waist where he put other interesting stuff he found. They were about to take off when Diary caught up again. She panted, then yelled, "Hey! Quit leaving me behind." Kakarot said, "You're slow." Diary growled. Kakarot smiled, then jumped off. He said, "Cherisu, this is Diary. You need to be nice to her." He put Diary's hand on his nose. He sniffed her. He said, "Come on, then." He got back on and pulled her up. Diary cried, "There's no saddle." "What's a saddle?" "Something you hold on to so you don't fall off." "Hold on to me." Diary did. The horse ran. It terrified Diary for the first few minutes, then she began to relax when she realized the horse wasn't trying to kill them and she began to enjoy it. They ran home. Bardock and the other Saiyans were standing at the back of the house when they showed up. They rode around. Bardock spotted them first and his attention first fell on Diary, with her beautiful brown hair blowing in the wind and her face flushed from the ride with a smile on her face. He snapped out of it and noticed the horse. "What on earth?" Kakarot said, "My horse. His name is Cherisu." Diary answered, "Horses sleep in a stable like the one we were at." Kakarot cried, "Cherisu needs a house." With a smile, Bardock said, "Kakarot." Kakarot studied his father's face. "Not promising. Father, did I approve of your horse?" Kakarot swallowed. "No, sir. There is no room for a horse. I can make a house for Cherisu. We have no need for a horse." "We do not. Then why do you want one?" Kakarot said quietly, so only his father could hear, "Because he is my friend." He looked his father in the eye for a brief moment. Bardock thought, "This planet has turned me soft." He said, "Never accept something without telling me again." "Yes, father." He grinned. Bardock continued, "And, you will cut down the trees and take off the bark for the wood for the stable. Do you remember how I did it?" "Yes. Go get a dozen trees as thick as you and at least twice as tall to start off. Go." Kakarot ran off. Cherisu looked at Diary. Diary looked back at Cherisu, then he put his head under her arm. Then Bardock exchanged a glance with her. She said, "Long day." He said, "Yes, it has been." She asked, "Bardock, can I talk to you alone?" Bardock nodded. He said a few words to his fellow Saiyans, then the two of them walked out of earshot. "Yes, Diary." Diary looked down at her feet. She said, "Your son, he called me mother. What does that mean?" She looked up at him, but didn't make eye contact. She was fighting back a blush as it was. Bardock looked thoughtful. "That is strange. Tell me what happened before that." Diary said, "Well, I was calling him a kid and he got mad at me and jumped on me and we fought. After I beat him I told him about how he couldn't win a fight with just brute strength." She blushed, but didn't look down. "Then he said he could see why you liked me and that he accepted me as mother." She was blushing bright red at this point and had her head bowed again. Bardock said, "You defeated him in battle. That caused him to respect you, also I give him the same advice. I do consider you worthy of being my mate and he must approve of you." Diary blushed redder. He said, "However, it may be a few years before I can take a mate. We five may be the last of our race. We have to keep our race alive." Diary nodded. Bardock said, "Maybe later, you could stay and watch my children." Diary nodded again. "I'm going to go back home now." She left, but didn't let the tears come to her eyes until she was in town. Remendo, I need to translate this one. Bana Banana Solarisalary Caleb Calabash. The team of Saiyans had just run the scenario Bardock had given them. Ramen faced Bardock and asked, with a scowl, "Do we really need to destroy our scouters?" Bardock answered, "Yes, they could be used to track us and I've already disabled the communication equipment on your ship and it's hidden." He looked at his house and decided it wouldn't be enough to house them all, not comfortably. "We must do much building." Solari asked, "Did you build this house, Master Bardock?" Bardock nodded and said, "Yes, and we shall build 3 more. 3 more. Bardock clarified. 3 more of the same size and 2 smaller ones for the females if they so wish. Solari and Bana nodded. Bardock said, "Until they are built, you may stay in my house. It is late. We will start in the morning." Kakarot asked, "What about Cherisu?" Bardock answered, "The horse sleeps outside." Kakarot glanced at his father, "Can I stay with him?" Bardock shrugged, "If you prefer the ground to a bed." Kakarot grinned, "Thank you, father." He ran out. The rest of the Saiyans went in. In the morning they hunted for breakfast, then Bana ventured, "Now, what, Master Bardock? Do we start building now?" Bardock shook his head. "First, we have to go into town for some supplies." His son heard and called for his horse. Cherisu ran up and Kakarot swung onto his back. Bardock looked at his son and the horse. "The rest of us will meet you in town, Kakarot." "Yes, father." He took off. Bardock saw a large gathering as they flew into town. They landed and he walked up to the crowd. He asked a man, "What is going on?" The man answered without turning around, "The mayor is talking to the people about what happened." Then he turned around and his eyes widened. Those are the killers." People around him heard and turned to look and screamed. Soon the crowd was in an uproar. Bardock yelled, "Silence." They quickly quieted. He turned to his fellow Saiyans and said quietly, "Follow me." Bardock stepped onto the podium as his fellow Saiyans waited. The startled mayor exclaimed, "Mr. Bardock." Bardock took the mic, "I need to talk to them." The mayor nodded, still shocked to see them together. Bardock said, "Listen, townspeople, have I ever done anything but good to you people in your town?" He let them think, then continued, "I regret the lives lost and tell you that this happened under a misunderstanding. It will not happen again. I promise. These now answer to me and from now on I will be accountable for their actions." A woman cried, "They are murderers." Bardock protested, "No longer." The mayor put his hand on Bardock's shoulder, he was up on a box, and spoke to him quietly enough so the townspeople wouldn't hear. "The families will find it too hard to accept that their loved ones were accidentally murdered. I know you have only done good for us, but if they are to remain with you, I must ask you to leave this town." Bardock said, "How will I move my home?" The mayor said, "I will give you a gift. Do you know what a capsule is?" Bardock asked, "The small device that can hold almost anything." He asked in wonder, The mayor nodded. He talked to his assistant, who then brought it out. He took the mic. Citizens, I have come to a decision. Quiet yourselves. They did gradually. He then continued, for saving the rest of us and for his help in the past, I give Mr. Bardock this package of capsules. He emphasized the last part of his sentence, to facilitate his leaving the area. There was a pause, then muttering among the crowd. The mayor continued, with a sigh. A town meeting will be held this evening, before the wake. By then Bardock and the others will be gone. Bardock looked at the mayor and the crowd of humans in anger, then regret. He sighed and took the capsules. He left the podium. Let's go. Caleb asked. What happened? We're moving. They started walking. Kakarot trotted along on Cherisu, behind. Father. Quiet. The other Saiyans walked along in silence, not understanding why Bardock didn't show the humans their place. When they had gotten halfway home, Ramen finally spoke up. Master Bardock. Bardock had calmed down some. Yes, Ramen. Ramen looked at him, anger still in his eyes toward the humans. I don't understand. Why didn't you just take over the town and kill some of them, show them their place? Instead, we run like beaten dogs. Bardock turned to face them all and said, under Frieza we murdered races thousands of times over. No more. From now on we kill only for food or in defense. They looked at him in surprise. He said, almost a yell, we are better than that stinking lizard. Bardock's face screwed up with hate and he spat on a chameleon they passed. He half smirked as it scurried. Run, lizard. One day you will meet your fate from the hands of a Saiyan. The other Saiyans took in what he said. Bardock continued, I need all of you to respond honestly. Did you enjoy the killing when you first started? Bana started. Not at first. I threw up the first time I killed someone, but then I got used to it and, she shrugged, you know. Bardock nodded once, I know. He thought. Then the lust for power began and killing almost became fun. Then your conscience was locked away so deep it didn't bother you anymore. He asked, what about the rest of you? Me too. Same here. So did I. Doesn't everyone get sick on their first kill? Bardock asked. Why? They looked at him in surprise, obviously not having thought about it. Why? Bana spoke up finally. I don't know. Bardock saw none of the rest of them knew, so he told them, we were sick when we began killing because we are not born killers. It's just something Frieza's had us doing so long that we've gotten used to it. They looked at him, not knowing what to say. Bardock said, I want a new way of life here. If you don't agree with me, he let his statement hang as a half-threat. Ramen complained, but it's the only thing we're good at. Bardock said, learn a trade. You can still hunt for food. They paused. So Larry said, I'll try it. Caleb followed, I'll try it too. Then Bana, okay. Ramen asked, will we still train? Of course. Why? Bardock answered with a half smirk and a determined look, because we will still have battles to fight. Ramen nodded. I'm with you Bardock, sir. He then asked, sir. They could just see the main house and Bardock had frozen. He was having a vision. Bardock froze as a vision hit him. Again, he saw his son, but this time he was with a woman and a boy. He looked at the woman. He saw the bite mark that symbolized mating as her hair blew in the wind. She was his mate, but she was human. Why would his son have chosen a human mate if there were Saiyan mates to choose from as he had planned? He paid more attention. His son was complimenting the boy. Good, son. Try again. Bardock thought. Try what? As if in answer another vision came. He watched an older boy stand and waves of power crash about him. The ground began to shake around him and he raised his head toward a shadow that Bardock could not make out. The boy's face was contorted in rage. You killed my father, my grandfather, my friends. You monster. His hair turned gold and his eyes turned teal. Super Saiyan. A child achieved Super Saiyan when even the king had not. And the child was a half-breed. Perhaps it was time to rethink old ideas. Perhaps they were better off interbreeding. He would talk to his crew. A third vision quickly followed the second. Bardock thought, this is getting ridiculous. The boy was the same age. There were 7 orange orbs on the ground. The boy said, Shenron, I summon you. Bardock saw several new faces, friends, around the boy in a flash before the vision focused on what came of the balls. A dragon appeared. Bardock thought, What the heck? The dragon said. State your wish now. The boy said. I wish everyone that was killed by Bardock couldn't catch the name. He fumed. Why are these visions never informative enough? They tell me just enough to do something without making an informed decision. The boy continued, was alive at this spot on Earth. The dragon responded, your wish is granted. His son appeared, looking much stronger, along with himself and the other Saiyans and some he didn't recognize. What could have killed all of us and what would have done that and left the child alive? Bardock. He snapped out of it to have his name yelled in his face. Bardock muttered, I'm fine. Ramen said, you just froze. Bana's been calling you for a while now. Bardock said, I had a vision. What about? Something we will need to talk about later. Now we must move. He took out a capsule and pressed the button and threw the capsule at the house. The house disappeared and the capsule lay in its place. Ramen asked, but where are we going? Kakarot asked, what about Cherisu? Bardock looked at the horse and thought about it. His son seemed attached to the animal. He didn't want to let him go alone, but he needed to stay with the other Saiyans, he was their leader. Meanwhile, back in town, Diary looked around her small house and thought about Bardock. He was leaving for good. She may never see him again. She hadn't spoken to him in the crowd. Conflicting emotions filled her. She wanted to be with him, but not if it meant being his servant. She had to at least tell him goodbye. She ran out and got on her bike. Don't let him be gone yet. Bardock turned around and paused as he heard the sound of a motorbike. Diary. His guess was confirmed when she pulled up a short distance away from them and ran up breathless, Bardock. Diary. Solari looked back and forth between them. She whispered to her crewmates, let's leave them alone to talk. Ramen said, why? Bana said, Ramen, honestly. Solari's right. We should leave them alone. Come on. The four Saiyans went off a distance to leave the two alone. Kakarot stood with Cherisu and watched his father and Diary talk. Diary looked away, then glanced at Bardock, then looked away again, Bardock. Diary. Diary worked up the courage and said, I want to be with you Bardock, but I won't come as a servant. If I'm going to be with you, I'll have to be the only one or not be with you at all. Bardock looked at her. She was looking him in the eye, defiant, but he could still tell she was in pain over this. He thought about the vision. He said, I've realized since the last time we talked that my previous plan may have not been the best one. There will be no breeding program. My crew will be free to choose whom they please for mates. Diary looked away then, and you? My mate died when my son was less than a year old. Her death still causes me pain. I do not know if I am ready for another mate yet. They looked at each other. Diary said, so. Bardock was silent. Then he said, we're leaving shortly. He turned. Wait. Bardock turned back around. They locked eyes for a good 2 minutes, then they both looked away. Bardock said, I need someone to ride with my son to our new place and you rode so well. Diary grinned, I'll be right back. She ran and took off on her motorbike. Bardock smiled. Kakarot said, she's coming. Yes. She went home to get her things. She'll be riding with you to our new home. Cool. His son grinned and the other Saiyans got back. Bana and Solari looked at Bardock. He said, Kakarot, go to the stream and give Cherisu water before we go. Yes, father. He left. Bardock turned to the other Saiyans. He said, in my vision, I saw the son of my son Kakarot. He was a half-breed of Saiyan and human, but his power level was that of an elite and more. He turned Super Saiyan and he was but a child. The other Saiyans looked shocked. Ramen said, so your son and his son will both become Super Saiyans. What about us? Bardock said, that I have not seen. We will have to keep training and striving for it. Bana said, so, who do we mate with? Whoever you chose, but chose wisely. Mates are for life. He turned. Bana asked, Bardock, Bana, will she be living with us? Yes. Bana decided that was enough of an answer and decided it was a good time to be quiet. Diary was soon back. She capsulized her bike and put it in her pocket with the rest of her things. Bardock said, the rest of us are going to fly. We'll be there before you. Don't get lost. Diary mounted with Kakarot on Cherisu and the group of Saiyans took off and they rode off looking for their new home. The man said, Mount Fripen is on fire. The Ox King's house at the top is in flames and no one can put it out and his daughter is missing. Who is this Ox King? Is he in charge of this village? Yes. Bardock let the man go. A fire that couldn't be put out. Where? He looked over the ridge and saw a mountain on fire. That may be it. Ramen asked. Are we going to go check it out? Bardock shrugged. Let's go. Maybe we can make an ally of their leader by putting out this fire of his. He tried to sense out a power level and found a strong one by human standards. He's on the fire mountain. He shook his head. Come on. They went closer to the flames. Meanwhile, Kakarot and Diary were riding there on Cherisu. They came to a forest that looked like some of the trees had been cut down in it. Then a girl ran by being chased by a dinosaur. She screamed. Kakarot said, I've got to save her. Cherisu reared and Diary fell off. They ran on. Diary ran after. I hate it when he does that. Kakarot galloped up on Cherisu and he reached down and caught the girl by her shirt and put her in front of him. She screamed. Hey, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm trying to save you. She looked at him. Chi-Chi looked at this boy. He sure was handsome and he looked strong too. She smiled. Kakarot thought, why is she looking at me like that? He then noticed the dinosaur was still chasing them. He had no reason to kill it. He shot a small ki blast at it. Leave us alone. It looked hurt, then ran off with a roar. Chi-Chi said, my hero. I wish she'd stop looking at me like that. Kakarot thought, uncomfortable. Where do you live? On Mount Fripen, but it's on fire. Oh, I bet my daddy thought something bad happened to me and he's real worried. Can you take me back? Maybe you can put the fire out. Kakarot shrugged. Okay. She talked so much and so fast. He barely picked up on it all. They galloped on. Diary yelled, hey, brat. Wait up, will you? Kakarot grinned. Sorry, mother. Diary pulled herself up. No, you're not. She noticed the girl. Hello, girl. What's your name? My name is Chi-Chi. Who are you? Diary said, I'm Diary. This is Kakarot. That's a strange name. Diary shrugged. She said, we'll take you home. Where do you live? On Mount Fripen. It's over that hill. They came to where they could see it. Diary said, you live there. But it's on fire. Chi-Chi answered, I know. My daddy's probably worried about me. I've got to find him. They kept riding. With the other Saiyans, a huge man jumped out of the fire, seemingly. Bardock fought him off, trying not to hurt him. He was trying to get a better idea of his power. Then he said, you're the OX King. They both stopped. I am. Who are you and what are you doing here? I heard about the fire and came to put it out. The OX King said, but it can't be put out. It's a magical fire. The only thing that can put it out is the Bansho fan and it's lost. Bardock said, you don't mind if I try. The OX King shrugged. Bardock thought about it. A big enough fireball should cancel it out. Stand back. They all did. Just then Kakarot rode up. Bardock said, son, who is that? He said, oh, this is Chi-Chi. I saved her from a dinosaur. Chi-Chi jumped down and ran to the OX King. Daddy. The OX King smiled. I'm so glad you're okay, honey. He looked at the boy and said, thank you very much for rescuing my daughter. You're welcome. Bardock said, now, all of you stand back. I'm going to put the fire out. He gathered his energy and yelled, fire of 1,000 suns. Hundreds of balls of energy flew from his hands. Instead of pulling them together like normal, he tried something different, shield of flames. He turned it into a shield around the flames and detonated it. With an effect like a gust of wind, the fire went out. The OX King looked at the man in amazement. He must be really powerful to do an attack like that. He said, you did it. You put the fire out. How long have you been trying? Days. We tried water, sand, nothing worked. Fighting fire with fire works best in this case, it seems. Bardock's lip twitched in amusement at the appropriateness of the cliché. They followed the Ox King and girl back into the house. Bardock thought, it's damaged. The house might. Suddenly part of the ceiling fell in and the house began to shake. It's coming down. Everyone out. The other Saiyans flew out the window. Bardock picked up the OX King by the shirt and broke through the roof. Chi-Chi looked at Kakarot. He sighed and picked her up and flew out the window with her. Soon after they were out, the house collapsed. The OX King said, "Thank you again." Bardock said, "You are welcome. Now we must leave." "Where are you going?" "To find land to build on. I could show you a place." Bardock shook his head. "We'll be fine on our own." Chi-Chi asked, "Will I see you again?" Bardock looked from his son to the girl. He said, "We might run into each other sometime. Goodbye." He took off. His fellow Saiyans followed. Kakarot and Diary rode off on Cherisu. Ox King watched them leave. He had a feeling he hadn't seen the last of them. He then looked at their house. He was going to have to rebuild somewhere else. He sighed. Chi-Chi watched them go, and especially Kakarot. She thought, "He's so handsome and shy. And he saved me twice. My hero." She sighed dreamily. They scouted out the land and found a good place with a stream a few miles away. Bardock thought, "Why do I feel like that's not the last I'll be seeing of that man and girl?" He shook his head and shrugged the feeling off. He was probably just imagining things. The OX King knew of a place with a hill and a river a few miles south of Mount Fripen. That should work. "Come, Chi-Chi. It's time to move." "Where are we going?" "A place a few miles south of here. We'll have to rebuild the house." As they walked, the Ox King slipped into thought. Hadn't those strangers been heading south? He shrugged and kept walking. "Yes, father." Bardock looked at Diary. "Diary, yes. Why don't you scout the surrounding area, for fresh water, animals?" He trailed off and made an etc. motion with his hand. "Sure." Diary uncoofed her motorbike and got on. Kakarot asked, "Can I go?" "I'll build the stable when I get back." Bardock thought about it, then thought, "No, I can't go back on what I told him to do. He'll think he can get out of work for something fun." He said, "No, start work on the stable like I told you to." Kakarot sighed, "Yes, father." Diary took off. Meanwhile, about 2 miles away. "This looks like a good place to rebuild." "Yeah, it does, Papa. It's pretty. Why don't you take a look around while I start, see if you can find a little stream or creek." "Okay, Papa. You won't get lost. I'll be fine." "Okay, mark your trail on the trees this time." "Okay, Papa." Chi-Chi left into the forest. She marked trees occasionally with the blade on her helmet. Diary was riding along, when suddenly a little girl appeared out of nowhere. She had to swerve to miss her. "Hey." She trailed off when she recognized the girl. "What are you doing out here?" Chi-Chi looked up at her. She said, "I live out here. My papa's going to rebuild over there." "Where?" "I'll show you, but you can't get there on that, not now anyway. There are too many trees." Diary looked at her bike with a sigh. "More walking." She put it up. "Okay, let's go." She followed Chi-Chi into the forest. The Ox King looked up as he heard the bushes rustle. He saw Chi-Chi and smiled. "That didn't take long. Did you find water already?" Chi-Chi said, "No, but I found Kakarot's mom." Diary looked at the Ox King. He looked back. Then he said, "So, have you moved nearby?" Diary blinked, then shook herself. Her thoughts had started wandering. She said, "Yes, about 2 miles west of you." "That's great. Chi-Chi will have someone her age to play with." Diary frowned. "I don't know. Kakarot plays rough." The Ox King looked at Chi-Chi. He said, "Then they'll have fun with each other." Diary looked at the little girl. "She can fight." "Yes, she's strong for her size." "Okay, well, I better be getting back to camp." Chi-Chi's eyes got big. Kakarot was there. "Can I go, please?" The Ox King said, "I don't see why not, if you don't mind." Diary. Then she smirked. She had seen the way the girl annoyed him. Payback. "Sure, if you have no objection to her riding on a bike." "Be careful." Diary nodded. Chi-Chi cried, "Bye, Papa. I'll be back." They went off on the bike. A few minutes later, Chi-Chi was gripping onto Diary for dear life. She screamed. Diary said, "Chill out, kid. There's nothing to worry about. I'm an excellent driver. I've only been in a half-dozen accidents." Chi-Chi closed her eyes. Diary cried, "Woo-hoo," as they flew over a bump in the road. Back with the Saiyans, Kakarot heard the bike returning and went closer to the edge of the forest. Then he saw that girl with her. He ran back to his father. "Father, Mother has returned and she brought the girl that I saved. Why don't you go and greet them?" Do I have to? Bardock gasped as a vision struck him. His son is an adult again and his mate. I love you. I love you too, Chi-Chi. They kissed. Both were dressed up strangely. Then the vision was over. He would have to ask Diary about the clothing. It looked ceremonial. He had thought the girl looked familiar. She was his son's future mate. Well, if she was going to be his son's mate, she'd need some training. Father. Bardock shook his head. I'm fine. Go greet our guest. Kakarot sighed. Yes, father. He went over to the bike, where Chi-Chi jumped on him in a hug. Kakarot, you're here. He pushed her off, more to get free than to hurt her. Yeah, I am. Why are you here? Chi-Chi said. I heard you were here and I wanted to come and see. Kakarot turned. So you saw. Greetings, Chi-Chi. He walked off. Chi-Chi's eyes filled. He hates me. Diary said. He doesn't hate you. That's just how boys are. Do you want to know how to get him to like you? Uh-huh. Chi-Chi sniffed. Diary whispered in her ear. Chi-Chi said. But my papa trained me. Diary said. If you train with him and fight with him, he'll like you. Okay. Bardock called. Diary. She went over. Bardock. What is the earth ritual when the female dresses up in a long white dress and the male in a black suit? Diary blushed. Why do you ask? He tapped his head. I saw it. Diary thought. He had a vision about a marriage. Whose? She said. Between who? He said. Between what? Who was there? My son and a female. Diary saw he was concealing something, but she wouldn't ask. Then her eyes got wide as she had a thought. Chi-Chi. Bardock put his hand over her mouth. He hissed. That is why I did not tell you. I want this vision to come true. The son that they have becomes a warrior more powerful than I am now, in his youth, but I can't let anyone know. Sorry. The other Saiyans had heard Diary's explanation and inferred the rest. Kakarot hadn't heard it though, he was too busy avoiding Chi-Chi. Leave me alone. Don't make me sorry I saved you. Bardock said. I will pay a visit to the Ox King. We need to talk. He looked at the two children, then at the other Saiyans. He said, Chi-Chi, come with me. I'll take you back home. Kakarot looked grateful. Chi-Chi said, but, Bardock said, now. Chi-Chi hung her head and walked out with him. Once they were a half-mile away, Bardock said, Chi-Chi. What, do you want to spend more time with my son? She looked up at him with a smile. Yes, I do. Bardock said. Then I'll need to talk to your father, okay? Chi-Chi nodded happily. They continued walking through the woods. The Ox King was rebuilding the house from scratch, so he had only pulled up a few trees so far. You're back, Bardock. Bardock said. Take a break. We need to talk. The Ox King said. Chi-Chi, honey, why don't you use your helmet to cut down a tree for Daddy? Okay, Papa. She left. He asked. What do we need to talk about? Is it about my Chi-Chi? Yes. Did she do something? No. Bardock considered telling the man about his vision and decided he'd have to. It was the only thing that would explain everything. After the explanation, the Ox King nodded. He said, so, what do you want to do? I want to train your daughter along with my son. If your son's anywhere near as strong as you. Bardock said, I don't expect her to equal my son in strength, but if she's going to be his mate someday, she'll need to know how to fight. I've trained her. Not like I will. The Ox King frowned. How will you train her? Bardock said, my training's tough. I train my son to his limits. I would train your daughter to her limits as well. She may come home with bruises, cuts and broken bones. She will come home exhausted. The Ox King frowned. Bardock said, but if something comes after her, like another dinosaur, she'll be ready. She'll be able to defend herself. He looked like he was considering it. He hated to see his little girl hurt, but what Bardock had said was convincing. He said, no broken bones. No serious injuries. Bardock said, then we are in agreement. The Ox King said, yes, as long as she doesn't come home with serious injuries. Also, if the agreement is kept, your son is promised to my daughter. Bardock nodded. Deal. I will come to pick her up starting tomorrow. She will train with me for 2 hours in the morning, then I will bring her home. The Ox King nodded. Bardock said, once she stops falling unconscious at practice, she may stay to play with my son. The Ox King nodded again. Bardock took off. He landed back at their base. Kakarot went up to him. Father, is she going to be over here a lot? Bardock said, yes, I am going to start training her along with you tomorrow. Kakarot said, training? But she is a girl. She's human. Bardock frowned. Do you question my judgment? Kakarot looked down. No, sir. Get back to building the stable. Bardock watched his son go off, sulkily, then he went back to the building of the houses for the other Saiyans. He thought, tomorrow promises to be an interesting day. Training's at dawn every morning, but we eat first. I'll go wake up Chi-Chi. Bardock listened with his acute hearing to what was happening at the other side of house. Chi-Chi, you've got to wake up, honey. Chi-Chi. Nothing out of the girl. Ox King soon returned with an asleep Chi-Chi over his arm. She's a deep sleeper. Bardock cried. Breakfast. No response. He shrugged. That always works with my boy. He picked her up. She'll wake up on the way. He took off with her. Chi-Chi woke up and looked around. She was up in the sky. Someone had her. She screamed. Let go of me. She fought to get down. Bardock thought. Not bad for a small human girl. He said. Calm down. She looked up at him. Oh, it's you. Yes it is. What's going on? Bardock's sweat dropped. Didn't your father tell you that I'm training you with my son? Chi-Chi yawned and said. Oh yeah, Papa said something about that last night. Does it have to be so early? Yes. Bardock paused. He didn't want her to quit the first few weeks when it was the most difficult. She wouldn't get strong then. She already seemed fixated on his son. He said, I will train you, but if you quit, you'll never see Kakarot again. Her eyes opened wide. Never again. Bardock said, never again. So, if you want to be with him, don't quit. Chi-Chi said, okay. I won't quit. Bardock smirked. We'll see how strong her determination is. They arrived back at Bardock's house. The females, Bana and Celery, were cooking. Bana said, almost done, Bardock, sir. Good. We'll need a good breakfast this morning. Training starts today. Celery asked. Training? Bardock nodded. All of us. We all need to grow stronger. Bana looked at the human child. Did Bardock really plan on training her? She and Celery finished cooking and they sat down at the table. Chi-Chi looked at the others. She asked the woman next to her, why is nobody eating? Bana leaned down and whispered, Bardock takes the first bite. Oh. Bardock started eating, then the rest of them did. Bardock got up first. Outside. They followed him. Chi-Chi looked at Kakarot and smiled and waved. Kakarot frowned. He still didn't understand why his father wanted to train her. Bardock said, officers, 1,000 push-ups to start off. Yes, sir. Ramen, Collab, Bana and Celery dropped down to the ground in a line and started doing push-ups. Then Bardock turned to the children. Kakarot, 200 push-ups. Chi-Chi. Bardock thought, looking at her upper body, she wouldn't be able to handle too many push-ups. 100 should be hard for her. Chi-Chi. 100 push-ups now. But, Bardock frowned. There are 2 rules for training. One is no complaining. If you don't want to train, you can quit. The second is you do what I say. Understand? Chi-Chi nodded with a blush of embarrassment. Now everyone was looking at her. Yes, sir. She dropped down and started doing the push-ups. After the first 20 she slowed down. After 50 she was plopped down on the ground at 70. Kakarot had finished his and was watching. The adults were watching too. Kakarot thought, look at her. She's so weak. It's pathetic. He yelled, go home. You're too weak to train. Chi-Chi looked up with tears in her eyes, then she remembered what Diary had said. Kakarot would never like her if he thought she was weak. But she hadn't had to go through strength training like this before, but if she quit now, she'd never see him again. 75-76. She got back up, shakily, and started doing them again. She dropped back on the ground at 85, but started up again. She lay on the ground exhausted as she finally finished 100. Bardock thought, not bad, for the first day. Up. Training's just begun. Chi-Chi got up with some effort. Bardock looked around at the others standing around. He said, officers, sparring practice. Ramen with Bana and Collab with Celery. They nodded and began. Kakarot, endurance training. A slight grimace passed Kakarot's face, briefly. He walked up to his father and turned around. Bardock picked him up by his tail and yanked hard, then let him hang for a few minutes. He then yanked again and dropped him. Kakarot collapsed. Bardock said, "Chi-Chi, show me what you learned from your previous training." "Yes, sir." She paused. "Start now." She came at him with her helmet and threw it at him. He caught it. She kicked and punched at him. Bardock stopped her easily. He thought, she has a base for me to build on. She knows the basics. Is that all you've got? She surprised him by gaining intensity before she stopped with her shoulders slumped, panting and on shaking legs. Interesting. He said, when you are fighting an opponent stronger and faster than you, use strategy. Be creative. He paused and saw he had her full attention. Your aim needs work. Try throwing something smaller at a target, like knives. Also, work at your speed and strength on your own. Chi-Chi nodded again. Diary came roaring up on her bike. Bardock called, "Diary, were you successful? I got enough food to last even the lot of you for a week. I'll put it up, then come back out." Bardock said, "Keep it in capsule form. I want you to train with Kakarot." Diary looked surprised, then nodded. Kakarot rose off the ground. He faced Diary and ran at her. Diary defended herself and spun around to attack. Bardock said, "Chi-Chi." Chi-Chi looked at him. "Yes, sir. Get to the top of that tree without using your hands." "How?" "That is for you to figure out. That is your training for the rest of the day, and to help." Bardock took off his bandana and tied her hands behind her back with it tight. "Now, go." Chi-Chi walked up to the tree and looked at it. "This is impossible." She looked at the branches. "Wait, what if?" Bardock said. "Also, no help from any person or animal." "Darn." She frowned. How to do it then? There was a tree beside it. What if she kicked off of that? She ran up to it and tried. She got 3 feet up the tree and fell down flat and got all of the wind knocked out of her. She gasped for air as she lay on her back. "No, I've got to try again." She kicked off the tree beside it and got onto the low branch a few feet off the ground. When she tried it again, she lost her balance and fell. So busy she was with her task, she didn't notice the others go in for lunch. Training was over for the rest of them and they were back to building, even Diary and Kakarot. The sun was on its way down when there was a cry from the tree. "Yes." They all looked up. Bardock smiled. She had made it to the top, but she fell off barely a minute after her cry. Bardock ran and caught her. She had finally passed out from exhaustion. She had scrapes and cuts all over her legs and arms. She would have some good-sized bruises too, but amazingly, no broken bones. At least her father taught her how to fall. He said, "I'll be back." He took Chi-Chi back to her father's house and dropped her off inside and flew back. The OX King came upon his daughter on the couch. She was dirty, scraped and scratched up and bruised. The OX King's sweat dropped. He was serious. She woke up briefly when he was dressing her wounds. "Papa, how'd I get here?" "Mr. Bardock brought you here." He paused. "Chi-Chi, honey, are you sure you want to do this?" Chi-Chi nodded, with a yawn. "Yes, Papa. I did it." "What did you do?" he asked, but she was already asleep. He smiled, proud of her, but frowned, worried. He hoped that Bardock would keep his word and keep her safe. That night Bardock lay awake after the others were asleep. Diary walked to her mat where she was sleeping. She slept on the floor in Bardock's room and the others slept in Kakarot's room and the kitchen. He said, quietly, "Diary." She was also careful to be quiet. "Yes, Bardock. Were you watching?" "The girl." "Yes, she did it." Diary smiled. "You didn't think she could do it, did you?" Bardock said, "I had expected her to pass out before she got halfway up. She surprised me. Maybe she is worth training." Kakarot stretched, getting ready for morning training. He saw his father come back with the girl when he was in the middle of warming up. He asked, "Is she coming here every day?" "Yes, she is. Do you have a problem with that?" Kakarot looked down. "No, father, but why do you want to train her?" "She's a human." Bardock said. "Diary's a human." Kakarot said, "Yeah, but mother's different." Bardock said, "Son, were you watching when she climbed that tree yesterday?" Kakarot said, "Anyone can climb a tree." Bardock frowned. He said, Overconfidence and much arrogance is the downfall of the greatest of soldiers. I will see how you fare under similar circumstances. Chi-Chi looked back and forth. They were talking in the language that she didn't understand again. Bardock went into the house and came back out. He put a metal headband on his son and tied his hands behind his back and tied his tail to a loop in his pants. He said, "You must get to the top of that tree the same as the girl did, without the use of hands or tail, people or animals." Kakarot asked, "What is the headband for?" "It keeps you from using your energy, so you can't fly. It also makes you less strong than you would be normally, so you'll be about the level of a human boy." Kakarot's eyes widened. He touched the headband. Bardock said, "If any of the ties come off or the headband comes off, you get double training. Now, begin." Kakarot went up to the tree. "I can kick footholds into the tree, this'll still be easy." He ran at the tree and got up a few feet before he fell backwards onto his back. He hadn't made a dent in the tree. How had that happened? He scowled. He would try again. Bardock watched his son try to take the tree by force and fall down repeatedly. Bardock said, "Officers, begin training now. 1,000 push-ups and sit-ups, then pair off for sparring. I have special training for you afterwards. Go." They started. Kakarot growled low, "Stupid tree." He aimed to blast it, but nothing happened. He looked down at his hands in surprise. Oh, father had said the headband would do this. How had that human girl done it? He looked at her. Chi-Chi saw Kakarot looking at her. She blushed and looked down. She looked up at Bardock. Bardock said, "Chi-Chi, 100 push-ups. Again, every day. Begin." Chi-Chi sighed and started. Kakarot thought, "That's right, I saw her bouncing off the trees." He ran up a tree a few feet and got onto a low branch on the one beside. He then jumped onto the next branch on the tree that he was climbing. His perch was precarious, however, and without the added balance of his tail he fell back to the ground again. This time he landed on his front. Kakarot raised his head and pounded his fist on the ground. "This is harder than I thought." Chi-Chi had finished her push-ups. She sat, panting on the grass, watching Kakarot try to climb the tree. She yelled, "You're doing it wrong. Don't go so far out on the branch. Make it as close to the trunk as you can when you jump." Kakarot turned and looked at her in surprise, then in anger, then he decided to ignore her. Kakarot thought, "Who does she think she is? Telling me what to do? I can do this on my own." All the Saiyans turned to look at the girl. Bardock said, "If you have energy enough to shout that loudly, you have energy enough to do 100 more push-ups." Chi-Chi groaned. "Start now." She started. After a few more falls, Kakarot thought, "She did make it to the top, maybe she knows what she's talking about." He tried doing what she suggested and made it up a few more branches without falling. Bardock smiled when he saw the progress of his son. He looked down to a Chi-Chi who had stopped moving. "Chi-Chi." "Yes, sir." She panted. "You haven't finished your 100 push-ups." "No, sir. You have 50 more to go." "Keep going." "Yes, sir." She rose up on shaky arms and started again. Kakarot fell down again, but he had made it 3/4 of the way up the tree. He ran at it again. Not using energy is really hard. He was only a few branches away from the top when he lost balance and fell again. He growled audibly this time. He ran at the tree again and didn't do as well as he had before. Bardock called, "Do not get angry. You will do worse. Clear your head first. Concentrate on balancing and aiming yourself." Kakarot looked at his father and finally nodded. He tried it again. Chi-Chi thought, "He's almost got it." She was exhausted from the push-ups, but grateful Bardock wasn't paying her any attention right now. She saw him fall, but get up to start again and yelled impulsively, "Go Kakarot. You can do it. You've almost got it." He looked at her with a look of surprise, a slight frown, then a smirk. "I know, and I'll go higher than you." Chi-Chi crossed her arms with a HMPH. She still watched him though as he finally got to the top of the tree and he jumped up from the last branch and onto the top one. He then jumped off and landed after doing a couple of flips on the ground. He grinned. Bardock looked at his son with leaves in his hair, his clothes torn, and some scrapes and cuts. He said, "Yes, you made it. It wasn't as easy as you thought, was it?" Kakarot looked down, humbled, "No, sir. Bardock told his son to take off his headband and ties. Kakarot did, then flexed his hands and shook his hair. He then looked at Chi-Chi. He said, I didn't need your help, you know. I could have done it fine myself. Chi-Chi said, but, Kakarot turned to Bardock ignoring her, do I do the rest of my training as well? Bardock said, only 200 push-ups and sit-ups. I want to begin on the other lesson soon. Begin. Kakarot dropped to the ground. Bardock looked at Chi-Chi. She was tired, but not about to pass out yet. He said, Chi-Chi, follow me. She did. Bardock went into the kitchen and took out 3 knives. He then went outside to a different tree with a knot in it. He dug a line in the ground with his foot. Hit the knot in the tree with the knives and get it to stick. But the knot's so small. It's the size of my hand. Bardock frowned. That sounded like questioning me. No sir. Good. Begin. You may go home when you have hit the knot. He walked away to the others. Chi-Chi held the knives. This is ridiculous. The knot is tiny from here. She squinted and started throwing the knives. All 3 missed the tree. She sighed and went looking for them. They were heavy, so they hadn't gone far. She picked them up again. She could hear Kakarot and the others doing some other sort of training. Her eyes watered. Kakarot had gotten mad at her again, then she got angry. He didn't think she could do it. He thought she'd quit and leave. She'd show him. She'd show them all. She threw the knives again. Training was done for everyone else and it was time for lunch. Chi-Chi was still working on target practice. She was still throwing knives afterward. Everyone else started back to the building of the houses. Later, when it was starting to get dark, Solari said, Master Bardock, I haven't heard the sound of knives striking wood and land for several minutes. Bardock said, you are correct. Finish up what you can before dark. I will investigate. He left. He noticed Kakarot catch up to him and walk beside. Bardock found Chi-Chi asleep underneath the tree. She had a few minor cuts on her hands, just superficial wounds. He looked for the knives. One was beside her, one was a foot away from the tree and one was on the outside ring of the knot. Bardock pwked her up. He looked at the knives and where she had been standing. He took up a knife and put the headband back on. He threw the knife then ran up to check on it. It hit the tree, but it was nowhere near the knot. He looked in the direction of the girl, but his father had already flown off with her. Chi-Chi, maybe she's not as bad as I thought if she could just learn how to fight decent. It was the time after training with not a lot to do, and Bardock was relaxing with his new mate, Diary. They had become mated around 6 months ago and she was pregnant, due in a couple of months. Diary said, you better get used to it, Kakarot. You'll soon have a baby brother and sister too. 2 more. What am I? The captain of the baby squad. He went off in a huff. Bardock laughed at the image that evoked, then he thought, wait, that's a good idea. Kakarot. Kakarot came back with a look on his face that said he thought he was in trouble. Bardock said, you're not in trouble, but you gave me a good idea, captain of the baby squad. Kakarot asked, you're serious? He looked skeptically at his father. Bardock said, they'll be walking soon. Help them. As soon as they can, you'll be their trainer. Starting tomorrow morning. Yes, sir. Bardock said, you're supposed to say, yes, Master Bardock. Geez, first day as an officer and you can't even address me properly. Go take a dip in the river. It's obvious I won't be able to do anything with you today. Kakarot's eyes widened as he realized what his father had just said and that he had the rest of the morning off. He grinned, yes, Master Bardock. He ran off with a whoop. Chi-Chi poked her head out of the kitchen where she was working with Solari. What happened? Bardock said. Kakarot got promoted. To what? Officer. Bana said. Why? He's just a child. Bardock said. He has to be an officer if he's going to be a captain. Raman asked. He's going to be a captain. Of what? Bardock said. As seriously as he could manage, the baby squad. He let a small smile slip out. The Saiyans were torn between being amused and confused. Finally, amusement won and they all laughed, but there was also concern. Bana said, you know he will take his position seriously. He doesn't think it's a joke. Bardock said, although the idea is amusing, I think that it may turn out to good for him and the younger ones. It will give him leadership skills and more patience, Hopefully, he saw Chi-Chi staring up at him from where he sat on the sofa. Yes, Chi-Chi, are you done in the kitchen? Soleri came in, with a knowing smile towards Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi said, I was wondering where did Kakarot go? Bardock said, to the river. Have you finished your kitchen duties? Chi-Chi looked at Soleri. Soleri said, yes, she has Master Bardock. Bardock said, then you may go. Be back by dinner. He remembered something as she was about to walk out the door. Oh, and ride Cherisu there. Chi-Chi stopped herself before asking why. She shrugged to herself. Yes, sir. She left. She went to the stables and Cherisu greeted her with a playful snort. Chi-Chi said, hey, we're going to go meet Kakarot. Cherisu nodded his head up and down a few times and let Chi-Chi mount him. As soon as she did, however, he took off at a fast pace, almost making Chi-Chi fall off. Cherisu whinnied in a hoarse laugh. Chi-Chi yelled, that wasn't funny, Cherisu. Kakarot looked up at the sound of hooves. It was Cherisu, he was sure of it, and as he came into sight, it was proven. Chi-Chi was riding him. She got off when she got close to the bank. Hey, Chi-Chi, guess what? What? Kakarot practically had his chest poofed out with pride. I'm an officer now, he stated proudly. Chi-Chi looked at the boy in a pair of short pants and hair that seemed to retain most of its spikiness despite being wet and said, you don't look like it. Kakarot was angry for a moment, then he smirked. He said, well, you look even less like a soldier. He dunked her in the water. Chi-Chi came up gasping. Then she pulled him under too. See how you like it. She splashed him when he dove for him again and laughed. Kakarot asked, what are you doing? Chi-Chi said, playing. It's fun. It's like sparring, but we're not fighting for real and it's in the water. Kakarot cocked his head. Chi-Chi splashed him again. Hey, he splashed back. Chi-Chi got him back with another laugh. Kakarot laughed when she tried again and missed and was open for him to splash her in the face. She coughed. You're going to pay for that. Bardock listened to the children playing in the nearby river. The girl really had turned out to be good for his son and his son for the girl. He wondered if today was the day shown in a vision he had had several months ago. He shrugged to himself and decided to take a nap. Kakarot and Chi-Chi had been almost too caught up in their game to notice the approach of a stranger. Bardock listened to the children playing in the nearby river. The girl really had turned out to be good for his son and his son for the girl. He wondered if today was the day shown in a vision he had had several months ago. He shrugged to himself and decided to take a nap. Kakarot and Chi-Chi had been almost too caught up in their game to notice the approach of a stranger. The said stranger had been riding through town on a hoverbike and was now going through the woods on a motorbike, when suddenly a lake appeared out of nowhere from behind the trees. Kakarot swam fast and pushed Chi-Chi out of the way of a hoverbike and its passenger that both plunged into the lake. Kakarot growled, hey, what are you doing? You should go slower if you can't control that thing. Chi-Chi coughed, then said, hey, calm down, Kakarot. I think that was a girl. She was going fast. She might be hurt. Let's so see. Kakarot said, go if you like. He stayed where he was with his arms crossed. Chi-Chi sighed. Boys were so stubborn. She swam over quickly. The girl had gone under. She dove and brought her up. She coughed. Chi-Chi saw her blue hair and thought, what a strange girl. The girl looked to be a few years older than her and Kakarot, and she also had a gash along her head and maybe a few broken bones. She took her to shore. Kakarot watched Chi-Chi leave the lake and stress-marked. All over that stupid girl who almost ran them over, and he had been having a good morning. He sighed and swam out to join Chi-Chi. His curiosity was getting the better of him. When he got to shore, he noticed that the girl wasn't moving and Chi-Chi was kneeling over her. He said, what, is she dead? Chi-Chi said, no, she's just unconscious. We should take her back home with us. Chi-Chi had begun to consider Kakarot's house almost more of a home than her father's, since she was there more often. Kakarot said, no way. There are enough girls at my house. Chi-Chi punched him. It's not your house. It's your dad's house. Kakarot growled, hey, you wanna fight? Chi-Chi looked at the girl. She'd be fine for a couple of minutes. She said, fine, I win. She goes home with us and you can't complain about it. If you do, I get to pull your tail. Kakarot growled, fine, when I win, we leave her here. Serves her right, and you have to clean out Cherisu's stall for a week. Chi-Chi wrinkled her nose. Ew. Is that even? Kakarot smirked and crossed his arms. Does that mean you don't accept? Chi-Chi frowned, then said, I accept. Bring it on. Kakarot flew at her. Chi-Chi ducked. She had learned early on that she was no match for his strength or speed, so she had begun to develop techniques. Her father taught her one a couple of weeks ago. She called it the afterimage technique. She ran around him, fast. Kakarot said, What? How are you doing that? There are 8 of you. He ran at one and threw it. Then he got struck and flew backward a couple of feet into a tree. Chi-Chi said, I call it the afterimage technique. Kakarot frowned as he got up. You've never used that technique before. Chi-Chi smiled. I was saving it for a fight. Kakarot smirked and wiped his mouth. She kept surprising him. He liked that. Also, the blue-haired girl interested him. She had been riding a bike like his mother's. That meant she was probably from a city. He shrugged. I'm tired of the water anyway. We might as well head back. Do what you wish with the girl. Chi-Chi frowned. Kakarot didn't usually quit a fight midway. Why did he do that? She dropped it though. They should get the girl back soon. She needed to be looked at. Kakarot said, You carry her. Chi-Chi said, She can ride on Cherisu. Kakarot smirked. What Cherisu? He isn't here. Chi-Chi looked around. You didn't send him home, did you? Kakarot said, I haven't seen him since you got here. Chi-Chi frowned. Cherisu had ran off, probably home. She stress-marked. Damn horse. She said. But, Kakarot said, if you want to bring her, you carry her. I don't care. Chi-Chi growled and half picked up the girl and dragged her. She was at least a foot taller than her, and heavier. She'd be too awkward to carry properly. Bardock felt his son and the girl coming back before he saw him. Then he noticed Chi-Chi was half carrying an older girl with blue hair. He thought, so it is the day that he meets the finder of the Dragon Balls. He called, Who's that? Kakarot said, Some stupid girl that ran her bike into the lake. Chi-Chi glanced at him, with a dangerous look in her eye. Was that a complaint? She said quietly. Kakarot looked at her. He wouldn't admit it, but that look on her face was kind of scary. He said, No, just a statement, mildly. It may not make him pass out anymore, but a tail pull still hurt, and knowing her, she'd pull hard. Chi-Chi smirked. I thought so. Kakarot thought, damn, I should have continued the fight. I let my curiosity get the better of me. And I could have gotten her to clean out the stalls. He bemoaned his premature decision mentally, but not aloud. Chi-Chi was still looking at him. Bardock watched them amused. Had Kakarot lost some sort of bet? He then looked at the girl with blue hair. Head gash, a broken leg and arm. Yep, this was the day. She had been in the same condition in the vision. He knew some first aid, but Solari was better at it. He called her, Solari. Solari was there in a minute. Master Bardock. You were the best at doctoring among us. Take care of this girl's injuries. Solari looked at the human girl with blue hair. Another human girl. Why? Certainly this one was not meant as a mate. Bardock caught her look and the direction of her thought and said, No, not that. She has a purpose later on. 2 days later, Bulma woke up in a strange room not her own with wooden walls and floors. It looked kind of like a cabin, but it was mostly bare in furniture. She was on some bed. She sat up and her head throbbed. She touched it and encountered a bandage. She then looked down at herself and saw left arm was in a sling and her left leg was bandaged and in a splint because she couldn't move it. What had happened came back to her. She groaned. Stupid lake, coming out of nowhere. A boy walked by her room then stopped and looked back in. HN, you're finally awake. I thought you were dead. You've been out for 2 days. Bulma said. Hey, you little, then it struck her. 2 days, she cried. Kakarot cringed. She made his ears hurt. He said, You're too loud. Are you trying to give me a headache? Bulma cried. My dad's going to kill me. Worse, he'll ground me. I've been gone 3 days. She groaned. Kakarot said, Hey, talk to Chi-Chi. She wanted to bring you here. I was happy with leaving you where you were. A voice called. Kakarot, that was a complaint. The boy suddenly looked nervous. Then a little girl with black hair appeared. It was a complaint. Kakarot said, You heard wrong. It was a comment. Chi-Chi said, I don't hear wrong. She grabbed his tail and pulled it. Kakarot yelped. She did pull hard. Hey, Chi-Chi said. How do you feel? Bulma said. My head hurts. Where am I? She lay back. The throbbing of her head was making her tired. Then a man walked in the room. A big man. She scooted back in the bed. Who are you? Bardock walked in when he noticed the girl's ki level rise. He said, my name is Bardock and you are in my house. This boy is my son and the girl is Chi-Chi. They found you and brought you here. Bulma looked down at her bandages, then up at the man, warily, did you do this? He said, no, that's the work of one of my officers. Officers? She asked. What kind of place was she in? Bardock asked, who are you? She said, oh, I'm Bulma Briefs. Where do you live? Bulma blinked. West City. At the Capsule Corporation. Haven't you heard of it? Bardock shrugged. I've never been to this, West City. Bulma said, I've got to get back home. I wasn't even supposed to be out this far in the first place. Bardock thought for a minute. He thought, I would like to see this West City, but leaving the other Saiyans to visit a human would be a bad move. He said, Chi-Chi, Kakarot, take Cherisu and take this girl back to her city. She can travel now. Kakarot opened his mouth to object, but then looked at Chi-Chi and also decided that officers didn't complain either and sighed. Yes, sir. Chi-Chi said. Yes, sir. Bulma said. Wait, we're going now. Kakarot said. Come on. He left the room. Chi-Chi said. Yes. She helped her get out of bed and the older girl walked beside her. She backed up when she saw the horse. She swallowed. I'm not riding that. Kakarot smirked. Scared. Bulma cried. No, I'm not scared. He just smells bad. She waved her hand. Kakarot said. Get on already. He picked her up and threw her on. Once up, Bulma clung to the horse and righted herself. Cherisu snorted in Kakarot's direction. He said. I don't like her either, but father says we have to take her home. He got on and so did Chi-Chi. Bulma was on the back. Chi-Chi was in the middle. Bulma clung onto the younger girl as the horse galloped off. Chi-Chi turned around. She said. Don't take it personally. He doesn't like girls. Bulma looked at her. She said. That's so. Chi-Chi said. He's even fun sometimes when you get to know him. She smiled. She turned back around as Cherisu jumped. Bulma yelped and closed her eyes as she held on tighter. How much farther was it to West City? Kakarot watched the road and the people disinterested until one of the big overgrown bike things' driver yelled at them, watch where you're going. Kakarot frowned and threw a blast at the car, causing the driver to fly out of it and the vehicle to explode. Chi-Chi cried. Kakarot, shocked that he had just thrown a blast at a complete stranger. Kakarot smirked. Stupid human. Teach him to raise his voice to a Saiyan officer. His chest puffed out. Chi-Chi rolled her eyes. She cried. Sorry. As they passed, a lot more people were looking at them now, until Kakarot growled, keep staring and you'll lose the ability to do so. There were several audible gulps and everyone turned their heads in a different direction when he walked by, some ran away. Kakarot said, bored, what an annoying city. Are we close to your house yet? Bulma said, nauseated and nervous from the ride and the episode in town, yes, it's that dome building. Kakarot saw it and was mildly impressed. It was a big home. He asked, how big is your family? Bulma was surprised at the question. She said, there's just me and my mom and dad. Kakarot said, such a big house for 3 people. Have your parents no other children? No. Besides, most of the house is used as a business. A business? What is a business? Bulma looked at him. What? A business is where She was having trouble explaining the concept of a business. It's where people make or do things to make money. Kakarot said, oh, that's boring. Bulma cried. Boring. I'll have you know Capsule Corp. is a very successful business. All these cars and bikes were made by my dad. Kakarot looked at her with a bit more interest, HN. Then he lost interest again. Money and bikes are of no interest to me. They stopped in front of the building. Bulma got off. Kakarot said, learn how to ride a bike before you get one again. He turned Cherisu around. Bulma said, hey, I already know how to ride a bike. Then she asked, surprised, wait, you didn't bring me back for a reward or something? Kakarot scratched his head, lazily. What is a reward? If it's money, I already told you I have no use for that. I brought you back because my father ordered me to. He set Cherisu off at a gallop, ready to be away from this crowded city. Bulma stood there for a couple of minutes, trying and failing to figure out the young boy that had never heard of a business and who didn't care about money. The couple and the horse soon got back home. Bardock said, "That took you long enough." Kakarot said, "I didn't want to go through the trouble of the female fainting, so I had to go slower than usual." He got down and stroked Cherisu once on the nose, then Cherisu ran off just a second after Chi-Chi dismounted. Chi-Chi made a frustrated noise at the horse as he almost made her fall. The horse snorted in return then walked away. Chi-Chi thought, "You think you're funny, don't you, Cherisu?" Bardock turned to his son again, after watching the horse almost knock the girl down with amusement, asked, "How was the city?" Kakarot said, "Crowded and the houses were much too big and there was a house called a business." He shrugged. He saw the brats running for him. He soon had them clinging onto him. He pushed them off. "Get off. I'm the leader. Keep your contact for your mother." They got off. The girl started to sniff. Kakarot said, "Geez, Rika, what?" She showed him where she had cut her tail. His face softened from its angry glare. Tail cuts hurt. Saw where her mother had fixed it. He thought about what his father had taught him. He asked, "Did your mother put some pongi paste on it?" Pongi was a plant with medicinal leaves that caused a wound to become numb until it healed. Pongi. Bardock made his son and the other officers carry a small medical pack with them. It had no use most of the time, but it did have a couple of pongi leaves in it. Kakarot chewed the leaf up, quickly. It tasted bitter and it made your tongue go numb if you left it in your mouth too long. He spat it out on his hand and used the other to get it all out of his mouth. He licked the roof of his mouth. "Come here." The infant approached him hesitantly, with her tail behind her. Kakarot bellowed, "That's an order, soldier." She shrieked and ran up, trembling, almost crying again. Kakarot rubbed it into the spot on her tail. She fell down as the pain went away. Kakarot smiled briefly then looked down at the goop on his hands in disgust. He was about to walk in to wash his hands when he realized he had not yet been dismissed by his father. He looked up. Bardock had been watching the whole thing. He smiled. His son had the makings of a leader, toughness, but compassion and the makings of a good soldier, the ability to follow orders well and to improvise. He contained his smile when his son saw him and said, "Go. You're dismissed until evening training. Go get the pongi off your hands. Then go get fresh leaves for your pouch." "Yes, sir." He left. "Yes, sir." He left. "Since I'm about to do a time skip, here are what the ages of the characters will be. Don't worry if some of the ages differ from their official ages at the time. They may change for my story. Bardock and the other adults will be in their late 20s to early 30s. Kakarot 11, Chi-Chi 11, Bulma 13. The other children will be listed other their parents. Bardock and Diary. Seda M, age 5, Peppa F, age 5, they're the twins that were mentioned earlier. Toma age 3, Kana age 1. Bana and Ramen. Rika age 6, Miso age 4, Udon age 2. Celery and Collab. Kayan age 6, Kumin age 5, Mint age 1. They all had grown in 5 years. Bardock looked at the group. More children had been born since they had settled in this spot, many more. The twins Diary had been carrying had been born and they had had 2 others. Bana and Ramen had had 2 more children, and so had Celery and Caleb, not including Kakarot or Chi-Chi. There were 10 children in their complex, which indeed it was at this point. The other Saiyans even would go into town and had a passable relationship with some of the humans there, passable being they traded, got what they wanted and no fights were caused or buildings destroyed. They worked as hunters at first and traded for what they needed besides what was grown on their farm from that, but it soon became clear that money was needed to do much business in town. Bardock knew that his fellow Saiyans would be reluctant to have a job and be subordinate to a human. It was a problem that bothered him much, until he came up with a solution 3 years ago. He thought back on the day. Bardock had gone into town, along with Ramen and Collab to do trading. They had split off in different directions as they usually did and Bardock happened to walk past a large domed building. As he did, a girl with an unusual shade of blue hair bumped into him. She then looked up. "Hey, watch where, hey, do I know you?" She stared at him, then said, "Oh. Now I remember, you're that boy's dad. Bardock. Hi." A woman came out of the building. Bardock looked at her, a strange woman, with her eyes almost closed and blonde hair. "Bullmahoney. Who's your friend?" "Oh, Mom, this is Mr. Bardock. He's the one whose son brought me back." "Oh, how nice. You'll have to join us for tea." Bardock's sweat dropped. The woman took his wrist and pulled him in. Bardock didn't pull away, not wanting to break her arm. Besides, it would be good to see what technology these Earthlings had besides the bikes and capsules, which was about all he had seen. Besides, the instant sat uncomfortably on a couch. He wasn't seeing anything here. A gray-haired man walked in. Bulma said, "This is Mr. Bardock. He's the man whose son saved me." "Oh, a pleasure to meet you, sir. What brings you here?" Bardock opened his mouth. Bunny came back in. "I brought him in, dear. Isn't it nice? We should all have some tea and cookies. I put the tea on." "Bunny, dear, yes." Mr. Briefs sighed. "Go tend to your cookies, Bunny." He turned to Bardock. "I think you have better reasons to be here than to drink tea, Mr. Bardock. I can tell by looking at you that you're a fighter, but also that you're a smart man." "Why are you here?" Bardock said, perceptive. "I used to be a scientist." Bulma said, "A scientist? You don't look like a scientist." Mr. Briefs shushed her. Bulma crossed her arms. He said, "Used to be." Bardock frowned. "I moved." Mr. Briefs said, "What did you do as a scientist?" "Repair machinery, ships, etc. I also came up with a few innovations." "HMMN." There was a pause. "Mr. Bardock, you also don't look like a man with a lot of money. Would you be looking for a job?" Bardock remembered the long conversation that had followed, but they had worked out an agreement. Bardock would get a salary for working and building on devices and sending them to Capsule Corp. That way he could work on them and also found jobs for Ramen and Collab as security guards. The catch was that they would report an answer to him. He had had a time explaining it right to the other Saiyans so they wouldn't get upset over the subordinate thing. Yes, because of that, he had come up with an improved scouter for Ramen and Collab to wear so that they could communicate with him and so they could see each other. Just then one of them signaled in, "Master Bardock. Officer Collab, do we really have to do these daily reports?" Bardock hid a smile behind a slight frown. "It was an order, was it not, officer?" "Yes, sir." Collab, bored, gave a detailed, but brief account of the day. The only interesting thing that happened was that a thief tried to break in. Bardock looked at his soldier's amused face. "Tell me the details." Kakarot was outside with the children. He had declared Chi-Chi an officer when the last batch were born, although everyone else just called her a soldier. That was a step up. He had enough of them to deal with. He had put her in charge of the ones under age 3. She could handle those. He said, "Toma, pay attention before I send you back to baby school," as he had dubbed Chi-Chi's group. "Nissan." Kakarot said, "Soldiers pay attention to their commanding officer. It's exam day." All the younger children groaned. Kakarot had an exam day each week. If they didn't do what he told them to, he made them do push-ups and sit-ups until they passed out or tail enders training, and he didn't tell them which one until afterward. Was that complaining, soldiers? No, sir. Fly. His father had taught him how to a year ago and he had just demonstrated it to them a couple of days ago. As usual, he expected none of them to get it. They all concentrated. Many jumped, but fell back down. If nobody gets it in 5 minutes, you all fail. That was also the way he usually did things. He made it where only one had to succeed for the group to avoid punishment. Of course, the things that he usually asked were above their level, so it didn't matter. 1 minute. He looked around, bored, then he heard cheers. His attention snapped back to the younger children. Rika, Bana and Ramen's daughter, was floating a foot off the ground. Kakarot opened his mouth in surprise. "How?" he asked. "Rika, she lost concentration and fell down." "Did you get outside training?" She looked down. "Hi." Kakarot smiled. "What are all of you looking so worried about? You should all thank Rika. She saved your sorry butts from endurance training." He saw the relieved looks on their faces when they realized punishment wasn't going to be given out. Kaien asked, "Master Kakarot, is it okay for us to get outside training?" Kakarot said, Did I ever forbid it? He turned. The rest of you better learn before the next exam. Everyone's got to pass then. He heard cries of disbelief. He turned back around and said, well, it's obvious that if one of you can do it, all of you should be able to, so train with your group for the next couple of days. Kaien asked, where will you be? Kakarot said, self-training on the mountain. Chi-Chi said, you're going again. Kakarot frowned. Why did she always get upset when he was going to go away for a couple of days? He had started doing this a year ago when his father suggested it after beating him thoroughly in a spar. He trained using the nearest temperatures of the springs and high altitude and weights. I go every third full moon. Bardock walked up to his son and watched his tail twitch behind him. He said, remember to take moon pills each day. He had recreated something here on Earth that he had created back on Vegetace. It was something Saiyans took on the night of a full moon that kept them from transforming. For my story, Saiyans only transform on the night and the night after of a perfect full moon. He had started all the Saiyans on them when he had recreated them 3 years ago, after Solari had accidentally transformed and almost wrecked their house. There had been some argument before, but now they took them without complaint, for the most part. Bardock said, I see your soldiers are all still awake. It's exam day, isn't it? Kakarot said, they passed. Did they? Hi. That's either because you've been a great trainer or a poor one. Which one is it? Kakarot frowned. A trick question. He said, it is because I have creative soldiers. Bardock smiled at how his son avoided the trick question. Creative soldiers. What does that mean? That they have trouble following orders. The children flinched. Surely Kakarot would tell on them then. Kakarot said, no, it means that they are able to improvise when no orders are given. All of the children looked at him. Bardock said, well, good job then, soldiers. He walked on. Once Bardock was out of earshot, Kaien said, Master Kakarot, why didn't you tell Master Bardock? Kakarot said, it would reflect badly upon me. He smiled. Besides, you guys pass. Punishment can wait for when I get back. They went back to flinching. Kakarot usually gave extra hard training when he got back from the mountain. Kakarot's scouter beeped. Officer Kakarot here. It was his father. Come to my office. Yes, sir. He left, nervous. Had he answered wrong? He heard Chi-Chi call out to him, dimly, but he paid her no attention. He walked to his father's office, somewhat slower than usual. Bardock looked up. You were slow. Officers are expected to follow orders rapidly. Kakarot swallowed. Punishment time. Bardock said. However, no punishment today. I have something that I wanted to tell you. Yes, sir. There's something called the World Martial Arts Tournament that I wanted to talk to you about. It's coming up in a few months. Kakarot became still. Yes, father. Bardock's eyebrow twitched. The tournament isn't for another week. I know you're excited, but if you ask me one more time, is it almost here? I'm going to pick you up by your tail and spin you around so fast you blur, and then I'm going to throw you into something hard, like that mountain over there. Kakarot gulped and grinned nervously. Sorry, father. Bardock sighed. Go train or something. I've been training. I just got back from the mountains 2 days ago too. Bardock looked at his son in interest, and gave an exam yesterday. How did that go? Kakarot smirked. They were still tired this morning. What was their task? Target practice. I'm going to do it again next week. Target practice doesn't sound that hard. Kakarot smirked. Blindfolded. Bardock had a small smirk on his face as well. Yes, that would indeed be a difficult task for the children, but all of them seemed to look up to Kakarot and to want to avoid punishment training, so they improved at a good rate. His son was doing a commendable job. He said, it has been a while since you have blindfold trained, son. Kakarot swallowed. He hadn't been blindfold trained since they had moved here. He said, yes, father. Bardock said, after all, we can't have you testing the soldiers on something you are not proficient in, now can we? Kakarot said, no, sir, but he cringed. His father's system was to show how to do something and then fight with it. If he didn't use the technique, his father would win the fight and he would barely be able to walk the next day. An example would be a year ago when he had trained him how to fly. He hadn't learned the first time, so his father had fought him using flying and was able to attack him from all directions. He had been beaten unconscious. He swallowed. Bardock smiled at his son. One of his faults was that he sometimes got arrogant. Bardock realized that was a problem with most of the Saiyan race. Having a human wife helped with that. He could tell his son was remembering the last time he had privately trained him. He had been out of it for a day. He put the finishing touch on his device, sealed it in a capsule and said, "Kakarot." "Yes, sir. You will take Chi-Chi with you and fly to Capsule Corp and give this to Briefs." Kakarot was surprised. Chi-Chi didn't usually come with him on courier missions. He opened his mouth. Bardock smirked. "Your training will commence when you return. Be swift. This task does not require more than 1 hour. Are you listening? Hi. This is what you are to do. You are to give one of each of these red capsules marked food to Officer Ramen and Caleb. Then you are to deliver these 5 blue capsules to Briefs and ask for 10 more empty capsules. Repeat." Kakarot closed his eyes, then opened them. Red capsules to officers. Blue to Briefs, need 10 more. Which kind? Bardock answered. 5 blue, 4 red, 1 black. Repeat. Kakarot closed his eyes again, then said, red capsules to officers. Blue to Briefs, need 10 more. 5 blue, 4 red, 1 black. Correct, Kakarot said, but father, Chi-Chi can't fly. She will slow down the mission if I have to carry her. Bardock said, then teach her to fly. You have an hour to be back here. Mission completed. He turned around in his chair, signaling the conversation was over. Kakarot opened his mouth, then closed it. He scowled. 1 hour wasn't long enough. He put the capsules in his pouch and left his father's office. He went to the kitchen and found Bana. "Kasan, have you seen Chi-Chi?" Bana said, "She's outside with Solari. She just finished a training session with her group." Kakarot ran out. Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi turned around, stopping an attack. She and the younger of the women had built up a kind of friendship. The Saiyan had been training her on the side. Chi-Chi panted. "Kakarot." Kakarot said, "Father gave me a mission to West City. You are to accompany me. We are flying there." Solari looked at Kakarot. He seemed to be in a hurry, but he seemed to expect a negative response. She thought, "You finally got flying when Kakarot was off in the mountains. Show him." She had been apathetic about the girl at first, but she had grown on her. She had resolve uncommon in a human. She was almost Saiyan. Chi-Chi said, "Okay," but not very loudly. She was nervous. It was still a new skill. "Then let's go." He shot off. Chi-Chi lifted off slower. Kakarot looked back. She was behind. Kakarot scowled. If he knew Ramen and Caleb, especially Ramen, they would try to delay him so he would end up with punishment training again. He flew back and took her arm. "Come on." Tears came to Chi-Chi's eyes. She had worked hard on the flying and it wasn't good enough. She sniffed, but it went unnoticed by Kakarot. They landed. "Come on. Why are you going so slow?" Chi-Chi's lip quivered, but she blinked a few times and restrained herself from crying. Soldiers didn't cry. Crying would only make her look worse in his eyes. They landed on the lawn of Capsule Corp. She answered, "Sorry sir." The honorific stopped Kakarot. He frowned and turned to her. "We're both officers. Why did you call me sir? Only you're really a officer." "No one calls me that." Kakarot said, "Only father really calls me an officer. That doesn't mean I'm not." He finally noticed the tears that were threatening to escape. "What? I'm not good enough for you." A few choked cries came out before she could stop them. Kakarot frowned. "Females. What are you talking about?" Chi-Chi said, "I've been working hard on flying. I mastered it when you were gone training last time." Kakarot said, "Good. What did you expect? Did you want me to say, 'Good job, Chi-Chi on learning how to fly'?" Chi-Chi looked down. Kakarot said, "If I had said that in front of the other soldiers and officers it would have made you look weak, like you hadn't known it before." Chi-Chi whispered, "But we're not in front of the other soldiers now." Kakarot looked at her and said, "Fine, good job Chi-Chi on learning how to fly, now can we get on with the mission?" He looked at her with a half smile. Chi-Chi said, "Did you really mean that?" Kakarot said, "If I said yes, can we get on with the mission?" She punched him, but not hard, in the shoulder. He rubbed it. "Hey, cut it out. Father's already going to beat the tar out of me when I get back home." He said it in a light tone though. He noticed Chi-Chi was smiling now. Wipe your face. If you go in like that, Bunny will go after you. She sniffed and wiped her face. Kakarot saw his uncles and said, "Yo." They looked at him. Heads up. He threw the capsules at them. They caught them and Kakarot took off with Chi-Chi before the Saiyans could get a word in edgewise. Ramen laughed. The brats figured out we've been delaying him on purpose. Caleb said, "Hey, but this gets us lunch faster." Ramen nodded. "We'll have to come up with something else next time, though. Let's forget lunch again tomorrow." Caleb nodded. Kakarot ran with Chi-Chi beside him, to Brief's main lab. Kakarot was relieved at seeing him there. Briefs. Dr. Briefs saw Kakarot. The boy came regularly to make deliveries. Kakarot. Kakarot delivered the capsules and said, "Father needs 10 capsules. 5 blue, 4 red and 1 black." Briefs nodded and gave him a case. "The capsules are in it." Kakarot nodded and said, "Come on. Let's head back." He went out the back instead of the way he had come in to avoid Ramen and Caleb. Caleb, who was watching the monitors, had a laugh over this as well. "He's learned to use the back door. We've definitely got to come up with better tactics." Ramen smirked. "I have some in mind." Bardock heard the door open and confirmed with a glance that it was his son and Chi-Chi. It had only been 30 minutes. Much shorter than he had expected. He had known that Celery had been training the girl. She must have taught her to fly and Kakarot must have learned how to avoid Ramen and Caleb. He smiled privately. It was a game, really, but they didn't let on to Kakarot. It was to help Kakarot with escape strategy. Even Saiyans had times when they needed to remove themselves from the enemy to plan and regroup. He was sure Ramen would come up with something more challenging. He paid no attention to Kakarot for the first few minutes, then said, "How am I even supposed to address you to report when you walk in? Throw my door open and neither one of you is at attention." Kakarot blushed in embarrassment, so did Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi closed the door and stood behind and to the left of Kakarot. They came to attention. Bardock said, "Report." Kakarot said, "Officer Kakarot reporting. Mission to Capsule Corp success." He handed over the capsules. Bardock looked at them. He had gotten it right. "Good. I suggest you practice." Kakarot frowned. "When?" Bardock said, "Later." Kakarot was caught between being relieved and annoyed. Bardock said, "You should at least review beforehand. If you don't you'll be beaten to your bandana." He made a dismissing motion. He was reading a file. Kakarot clenched it in his fist and saluted, then left. Chi-Chi bowed, then followed him out. Kakarot stood out on the grass and lowered the bandana down to cover his eyes. It bothered him, not being able to see. He tuned his hearing. He could hear footsteps, then the stream, but where had Chi-Chi gone? He couldn't hear her. He could hear her breathing a minute ago. He jumped when he felt something strike his back. He took the blindfold off. "A ball. How?" As if in answer to his question, Chi-Chi said, "You're doing it wrong. You shouldn't rely on sound alone. If the object makes no sound, you must be able to feel the vibrations in the air." Kakarot scowled. "Like you can." Chi-Chi held out her hand for the bandana. Kakarot stared at her open-mouthed for a second. She was serious. He then closed his mouth and tied it good. He said, "Okay." He attacked her. She dodged him and blocked a few times, then he tried moving slow where he didn't make any noise. Chi-Chi even pointed him out before he came at her and mimicked his position when he stopped. She took off the blindfold with a grin. Kakarot shook his head. He was stunned. Here was something that Chi-Chi did much better than him on. "Okay, so," Chi-Chi said, "I told you how to do it right. I don't need help." "Of course not." She paused with a roll of the eyes. "You have to block out the other senses to feel the vibrations. You can't do it and keep your senses sharpened at the same time. Have fun." "Where are you going?" Chi-Chi smiled. "Why?" Kakarot said, "Who's going to attack me?" Chi-Chi said, "Do something else." She thought and then smiled like she had just had an idea. "The way Celery got me used to the idea was catching fish blindfolded. Go try that." She walked off with a smile, to check on Kana, Mint and Udon. Kakarot frowned, catching fish blindfolded. Then he thought, it worked for Chi-Chi. He went off to the stream. Kakarot returned from the stream wet and tired a few hours later. His father greeted him on the way back. "Time to start training." Kakarot looked up at his father with an open mouth. Bardock said. You didn't think we were starting in the morning, did you? Bardock paused, then said, no, the best time to start blindfold training is at night. But dinner, you can eat when you wake up tomorrow. Hi, Kakarot sighed. There was no going against his father, not if he didn't want it harder on him. They started. Kakarot was the one who showed it the most, but all of the Saiyans were looking forward to the tournament tomorrow and each had been doing extra training. Even the children of Kakarot's group would be competing. It would be fun to see if the Earthlings had anything to offer, although they didn't expect much. Bardock smiled when he saw his son with his group. He called, don't make them use up all their energy. They'll need some for tomorrow. They would be leaving in the morning at dawn for the tournament because they wanted to be there early. Kakarot looked at his father. Yes, father. He turned back to his troop. You heard Master Bardock. They looked at him. Miso, Ramen and Bana's son said, but what are we supposed to do then? Kakarot looked thoughtful. Well, since I can't train your butts into the ground like I usually do. Rika, Ramen and Bana's daughter, asked, hopeful, are we done? Kakarot said, soldier, did you just interrupt me? Also, I believe you're trying to back out of training. Rika said, and no, I'm not. I'm sorry, Master Kakarot. Kakarot then brightened like he had an idea. All of the smaller Saiyans cringed. When Kakarot looked like that, well, it wouldn't be good for them. He said, I've got an idea. Anyone want to guess what it is? Peppa asked. Hopeful, we're going to the lake. Kakarot said, cheerfully, nope. Since the tournament is tomorrow, today you get an exam, but it's a special one. You can't fail. He saw the other children look at him uneasily. He said, each of you is going to spar with me one-on-one so I can see if you're good enough to fight in the tournament. Kaien asked, but you said we can't fail. I don't get it. What if you beat us? Kakarot said, I meant no punishment will be given if you fail. I suppose I should have said that better. Human cried, you can't keep us from going to the tournament. He turned to his brother, can he? Kaien shrugged, but looked at Kakarot, doubtful. Kakarot said, it's going to be a 5-minute spar. If you can stay standing until then, you get to go. If you can't, you don't. You get 10 seconds to get up. No flying. He was dragging a stick along the ground. Also, you have to stay inside this ring. If you go outside of it, you lose. Got it? Good. Peppa cried. I'm gonna go get a timer. Kakarot shrugged. Go fast. She was back in a couple of minutes. Kakarot cracked his knuckles. First up, Human, because you've got a big mouth. Human groaned. He stepped into the ring. Kakarot was going to pulverize him. Kakarot said, Peppa, you get to say go in time. Say go when you start the timer and time when it hits 5 minutes. Yes, sir. She put the clock down and said it, go. Kakarot flew at Human. Human dodged him, but he caught his ankle and was thrown. Human watched with wide eyes as he was nearing the line. He panicked and threw a ball of energy and it pushed him backward, inside the line. He let out a breath in relief. Kakarot saw what he had did by accident. That's a good tactic. He said, did the rest of you see that? He looked at them. He said, it's something you should practice after exams. It would be useful in a ringed match like the ones tomorrow. He then turned to Human and said, you're not done yet. He ran into him and pooched him and sent him into the ground. The smaller boy coughed. Rika asked, how much time left, Peppa? Peppa's sweat dropped. It's only been a minute, Rika. The other's sweat dropped. Human thought, I'm gonna die. No worse, I'm not going to get to go to the tournament, and then I'll never hear the end of it from Kaien. There's got to be some way to avoid him for a few more minutes. Kakarot saw the boy go completely on the defensive. He said, stalling isn't a good tactic in battle unless you're preparing for a larger attack or waiting for your comrades to come and assist you. As you are doing neither, I suggest you rethink your strategy. He punched him and sent him flying again. Human rubbed his jaw. His eyes teared. That one had hurt. But how else could he win? Kakarot taunted. Come on, you're not scared, are you? Human cried. I'm not scared of you. He attacked. Kakarot had been goading him for just this reason and blocked him easily, fighting back, when the boy did something unexpected. He used a sneak maneuver and grabbed onto his tail. Kakarot looked at the boy with a mixed look of appreciation at his fast thinking and annoyance. He said, "You have been working on your speed. Good. Now let go of my tail." Human let go in awe. He said, "When I do that to my brother, he falls down." Kakarot smirked. He said, "My father's had me on tail endurance training since I was your age. That won't work on me." The younger Saiyans all looked at him in awe. Kakarot said, "Now." Human looked. He was a couple of inches from the line. Then he saw Kakarot's fist coming for his face. His eyes widened. He couldn't move, he'd only be able to back up, then he would lose. He braced himself and closed his eyes. Peppa cried, "Time." Kakarot paused mid-punch and looked at the clock. He said, "That was fast." "Oh, well, looks like you pass, Human." Human sat down, dazed. Kakarot said, "Okay, for the rest of you, this is still training for the tournament, so a few pointers. First, did you see how Human had his feet open? I could have swept him out of the ring. Be sure to guard your whole body from your opponent." Human's head hung down, shamed. Then his head snapped back up as he heard his teacher's next words, "But, what Human did when I charged him again was good. Never start a fight with all of your energy. It makes you stronger if your enemy underestimates you. Also, find your enemy's weakness and strike it. Overall, good job." Human grinned at Kaien. Bardock stood, still watching his son. He smirked, listening in. That was some of the advice that he had given Kakarot when he was training him. He must have found out about the rules for the ring on one of his trips into town. The blast that Human had done inadvertently was an interesting move. He smiled. Kakarot was becoming a good trainer. He watched the following matches. His son let them all pass, but made it really close on a few more. He started off with negative comments and then the positive ones. He nodded. He did the same with Kakarot after a training session. It toned down arrogance. He saw all of the smaller children sitting down panting afterward. He called, "Kakarot." Kakarot looked up, then came over. He saluted, "Master Bardock." Bardock said, "I saw what you did." Kakarot looked up at Bardock with a confused frown. "What I did?" Bardock said, "With your soldiers. Good job. You might turn out to be a decent trainer someday." He turned, not oblivious to the grin that was spreading across his son's face. He smiled. Kakarot asked, "I guess that means I'm dismissed." Bardock said, "Go jump in the lake or something." Kakarot grinned. He took off his bandana that he wore to keep his hair out of his eyes and let it hang around his neck. The other children turned to look at him. This usually meant that he was off duty. He had started doing this a couple of years ago. Bandana on Master Kakarot, bandana off just Kakarot or brother for Seda and Peppa. Suddenly his two younger siblings surrounded him. Peppa asked, "Did I really do a good job with my stance, big brother?" Kakarot grinned, still happy with the praise from his father. "You bet. You too, Seda. You two haven't been getting extra training from father when I haven't, have you?" He looked at them with suspicion in his mouth, but a smile in his eyes. Peppa giggled. Seda said, "Father said to go jump in a lake." Kakarot said, "Your point." Seda said, "Let's go jump in a lake." Kakarot smirked. "Yeah, you lot did get pretty dirty getting plowed into the ground." Peppa said, "You're dirty too, Mr. Coolness." Kakarot bonked her and said, "Baka sister. You picked that one up from mother, didn't you?" Peppa rubbed her head, but grinned. "Yep." She turned to the others and cried, "Last one to the lake is a rotten dinosaur egg." They ran off. Kakarot took off after them. Chi-Chi saw them leave and looked down at her troop, which were upset at not getting to participate in the tournament, even if they were young. She said, "I think that's enough for the day. How about going to the lake?" That perked them up. Yay. They ran off. Chi-Chi ran after with a laugh. They could really go from being depressed to perky in an instant. Bardock chuckled as he watched the scene. They may be Saiyans, but they were children too, and it was good for them to do things other than train sometimes. He yelled, "Oi, Kakarot, bring back a fish or two, why don't you?" He knew his son was still within hearing range. He heard a faint reply. He turned to his wife who had come outside. She said, "He's really come along, hasn't he?" Bardock said, "All of them have, and he's turning out to be a good trainer. The tournament tomorrow will be interesting, although we'll end up fighting ourselves. Diary said, not expecting any challenges. In a challenging way. Bardock's sweat dropped. Not all humans are as Saiyan-like as you and Chi-Chi. Diary said, well, I'll take that as a compliment, but I bet you'll be surprised. Bardock was relieved at having gotten out of that one. He said, I hope so. It's not something I would mind being wrong about. Before dawn, Kakarot was the first up and then his house and then the rest of them. They had an early breakfast and then the mothers rushed around getting their children dressed and ready and making snacks for later. Bardock called, since we're all going out, I'm going to call names. I don't want to have to come back for any of you. Just say ready when I call on you. They smiled at him, seeing it was meant as a joke. Diary, ready. Ramen, ready. He took the capsule his wife gave him and put in his vest. It was lunch. Bana, ready. Caleb, ready. He looked around, lazily, then started. Where was Solari? Bardock paused, then looked around. Solari, he called louder. Solari ran up. Sorry, Master Bardock. I'm ready. Kakarot, ready. Bardock went through the rest of the list of children. All were present and accounted for. Let's go. He had decided in the end that it was okay for them to fly until they got within a mile of the city, then they would walk. He picked up Diary. She blushed. I can fly too, you know. Bardock said. No one said you couldn't. I just like doing that. Diary smiled at him. She kissed him. Kakarot made a gagging noise. So did Seda. They all took off at once. Ramen and Caleb made annoyed noises. Bardock said, yes. Do we sign up there? Hi. Thank you. Bardock signed his name first and set the example for the rest of the Saiyans. The woman objected when Kakarot stepped up. He should sign up in the junior division. Bardock said, the junior division. For children. Bardock said, my son is no ordinary child. He will be fine in the adult division. As will the rest of them. You'll all have to sign liability waivers. Nani. The woman shook her head. These people sure were strange. She said, it's a piece of paper that says we aren't responsible for what happens to the child during the fight if they enter the adult division. Bardock shrugged and signed the paper for Kakarot. The Saiyans were all relieved when they got out of the line. Bana said, geez, I'll never understand humans. Did that one think we were going to take it out on her if our cubs got hurt? That doesn't make any sense. We'd go after the ones that did it. Ramen said, maybe signing it's a promise to not hurt them then. Bana said, if someone hurts my baby, I'll rip them apart. Bardock paused, causing all of them to stop. He turned around and addressed the group in Saigo, all of you, listen to me, for this is very important. There is to be no killing in this tournament, understand me? What are we supposed to do with them then? Bardock said, defeat them, but do not kill them. Understand? This is a tournament, not a war or an extermination. If we are to be on trading terms with this place we must do this. Anyone violating this order will face severe consequences. They all nodded and paled a little at Bardock's severe tone and face. No one wanted to go up against Bardock or make him angry. He was the strongest of them all. They all found seats in a section near the ring. Bana asked, what now? When does this thing start? She saw a couple of men who looked like they were setting up and yelled, when does this thing start? The man jumped, but yelled back, in a couple of hours. Solari sighed, what are we going to do until then? Caleb said, we could eat. That's not going to take very long. Diary commented. Bardock said, true, why don't we go through a training routine? That will take about an hour. Ramen and Bana cracked their knuckles. Ramen said, sounds good. I could use a warm-up. Me too. The rest of the adults were in agreement and the others weren't adverse to the idea. Chi-Chi asked, all of us? Even my group? Bardock smiled. Why not? They could use some exercise. In the stands. As more people arrived, the scene attracted more and more attention. There, down on the grounds with the ring was a group of around 20 people, more than half of that group being children. And it looked like they were fighting. The announcer came back from the ground, having went to find out what was going on. He went back to where he was standing and turned to the group of people who had bullied him into going to find out what was going on. He said, They're training. Training. So it hasn't started yet. No, it doesn't start for an hour. All of them can't be participating. He said. The toddlers aren't participating. They're young for the junior division. The announcer said quietly, they're all entering the adult division. What? That's a mockery. They're children. Some of the world's best martial artists have come to fight in this tournament. You can't let children in the adult division. They signed the waivers. There's no more we can do. They'll probably lose in the preliminaries. Calm down. On the ground, the Saiyans finished up their light training. Bardock asked, Diary, is there enough food packed for everyone? Diary nodded. She said, I have the other capsules. They walked back to their seats. They were occupied. A stress mark appeared on Bana's head. She walked forward. She said, those seats are ours. Get out. They turned to her. One said, I don't see your name on it. Bana growled. She then smirked and called, Master Bardock, it's not counted as fighting if I just throw some humans a few rows down, does it? Bardock shrugged, giving permission. They had been given the chance to move. He called, I would move, while you have the chance to do it of your own will. He was laughed at. Bana growled and chucked two of them into another section. The rest ran away. They sat back down and had lunch. The announcer and several of the others had seen the throw and sweat dropped. The announcer thought, it's going to be a crazy tournament this year. After what seemed like forever, all fighters were called down for the preliminaries. Bardock looked at the copy of the chart, so did the other officers. He smiled. It looks like none of us will be fighting each other until the semifinals. Bana said, which means a lot of meaningless fights. Bardock cracked his neck, or another warm-up. He smirked. Here is a listing of the numbers of Bardock and crew. There are 128 total contestants. Bardock number 33, Diary #115, Kakarot number 2, Sata number 43, Peppa number 74, Bana number 102, Ramen number 69, Rika number 109, Miso number 28, Caleb number 54, Solari number 84, Kayan number 90, Cumin number 59, Chi-Chi number 17. The announcer called, let the first match of the preliminaries begin. Will numbers 1 and 2 please step up, into the ring? Bana teased, of all the luck. I don't go until almost the end and Squirt here goes first. Kakarot said, I'm not a Squirt. Bana said, do something interesting in the ring. 1 second fights aren't interesting. Kakarot answered, they also take longer. I want to get this over with and get to the real fighting. True. She paused, then shrugged, whatever. Have fun. Lucky draw. Kakarot rolled his eyes and stepped up. He looked at his opponent. He was taller than him, about his mother's height, but was definitely an ordinary human. He didn't feel dangerous at all. All he had was a sword. Kakarot looked at it. It wasn't even a very good one in comparison to the ones his father had shown him. The match began. The man just stood there looking like he didn't want to fight. Then he looked away, to the announcer. Hey, isn't this kid supposed to be in the junior division? Kakarot stress-marked and asked, it's over when I throw him out of the ring, right? The announcer laughed nervously. He remembered what the woman had done earlier. He said, yes, the last person left in the ring wins. Good. Kakarot tossed the man out by his belt and he landed on his butt about 20 feet away. He stepped down. What's with all the noise from the humans? He said in Saigo, they sound like they're scared or something. I just dropped him. I didn't even really throw him. The announcer sweat dropped and said, number 2 advances. He then called the next few matches, none of which the Saiyans paid much attention to, except to roll their eyes at them. At least they were fairly quick. Finally it was Chi-Chi's turn. Will contestants numbers 17 and 18 please step up to the ring, please? Chi-Chi was up against another man like the one Kakarot had fought. She saw her dad in the crowd and yelled, "Hi, Daddy. Be careful, honey," he yelled back. The man she was fighting was thinking, "She's not one of them, she doesn't have a tail," he said. "Little girl, get out of the ring and go participate in the junior division." Chi-Chi grew angry. She said, "That was my friend who fought earlier and I'll beat you too." The man sighed. He didn't really like fighting a little girl. He said, "Tell you what, little girl, I'll let you have the first shot." Kakarot heard what was going on. He said, "He's going to wish he hadn't done that." Bana laughed. "The fight's over already. Fast, but still funny. The look on that guy's face will be great." They all watched as Chi-Chi yelled and punched him out of the ring. "Yep, priceless." She laughed. "Who's up next?" Solari said, "None of ours is up until your son. Miso. In about 5 rounds. Not too long I guess. Still, it's kind of boring, don't you think so, Bardock?" Bardock was watching the current match. There was a gray-haired man, who actually seemed to have a decent fighting style. He was different from the others. Winner, Jackie Chun. Bardock thought. Jackie Chun, I wonder if I will fight him in the semifinals. Did you say something, Bana? Bardock's did you find something interesting? Watch the human named Jackie Chun. I believe he will make it to the finals. Bana was surprised, so were the other Saiyans. Hi. They all watched when Bana's 4-year-old got up to fight. He got beat by an older bald boy with dots on his head. Bardock thought, his fighting style reminds me of the old man. I wonder if he is his student. Out of the next fights that the Saiyans and company were in, Bardock, Diary, Bana, Ramen, Caleb and Solari made it to the semi-finals through both of their fights. Chi-Chi lost when her second fight was up against the old man from before. There would be a break and then they would fight the next day. They followed Bardock to look at the semi-finals list. Bardock said, "Look like it's you and me, Caleb." Kakarot said, "I get the 3 eyes." Bardock said, "You get the old man, Diary. Be careful with him, he's stronger than he's showing everyone." Hi. Bana found her name on the chart and stress-marked, "I'm against the little bald kid." Bardock said, "If it's any compensation, I think he's the student of the old man. He might make it an interesting fight." Bana snorted. "Perhaps, for all of the 5 seconds it will take." Ramen said, "Looks like I'm fighting your wife, Caleb. Hope you don't mind." Caleb said, "Nah, I fight her all the time. You should watch out for her." Solari said, "Yes, I've been looking forward to a challenging fight." All out. Ramen looked at Bardock, who said, "No going Uzaru. Other than that, don't kill anyone else and have fun." They grinned fairly. Solari looked at the last match on the chart and saw the purple-haired woman and the black-haired boy that traveled with the flying cat were going to fight. She said, "How did that girl make it this far, and she's against that rooster hair boy?" Bardock said, "Trickery. The roosterhead's just lucky, so far as I can tell. He is a little better than the other humans that came, though." Solari asked, "Where do we go now?" Bardock said, "A hotel. The matches start in the morning." Hi. They followed Bardock to the hotel. The receptionist looked up to see the large group. They look kind of strange. Bardock said, "I made a reservation. You're all fighters in the tournament." "Most of us." "Hi. Then the rest are your guests." "Yes, and I reserved 3 double rooms." "Name?" "Bardock." "Ah, I see, Mr. Bardock, rooms 321,322, and 323. Here are your keys." "Thank you." He took the keys and kept one. He gave one to Ramen and the last to Caleb. "Let's go check out the rooms." Hi. They went to check out the rooms. Diary decided she'd cool off for a bit in the room, so did Chi-Chi, so her group stayed with her. Bardock said, "As for the rest of you, you can do what you like, just don't kill anyone and try not to destroy anything. If you would like to train, the tournament grounds would probably be a good place." They split up. Chi-Chi took Solari and Diary with her to go shopping, to the older women's protests. They did go however, for 2 reasons. First, they were bored. Second, their fights weren't until the second part of the tournament, so there was no point training yet. Ramen asked, "Are you going to train?" Caleb said, "You bet. I'm facing Captain Bardock in the first round tomorrow. I'm going to lose, but I'm still going to try my hardest. Ramen said. Yeah, need a sparring partner. That depends. You looking to get beat? Ramen grinned. Big words for someone who's going down. Caleb grinned. Bring it on. Diary poked her head out of her room into the hall and said, take it down to the tournament ring. I'm sure Bardock wouldn't like it if you destroyed the hotel while we're staying in it. Both Saiyans rubbed the back of their heads. Oops. I forgot we were still in the building. Caleb said. Ramen said. Me too. Go on. Do you guys have a food capsule? You're going to get hungry. They both looked and came up with nothing. Diary tossed them one. Don't lose it. Have fun. Hi. They left. Diary lay back on the bed, thinking. Her fights hadn't been very hard in the preliminaries, but she was fighting the old white-haired man next and he had even caught Bardock's interest. It was sure to be a tough fight. Kakarot's fight was before hers. She had seen the Three Eyes fight too. He had some interesting techniques. How did he copy himself like that? It was a good technique. She sighed. Worrying would get her nowhere. She sat up. Hey, kids, how about we go get some ice cream? Rika asked. What's that? A cold treat. But we all lost. Diary said. You did well. Come on, I'm paying. It's good, better than cake. The children remembered the cake that Diary had made and cheered. They followed Diary to an ice cream shop. The next morning, they were all up a couple of hours before the matches were to begin. Bana looked at Caleb. She said, you look pretty awake for someone who only got a couple of hours of sleep. Why sleep at all? Caleb said. The night guards made me leave the tournament grounds around midnight. Then I did some underwater training at the river that runs by here. I decided I better get at least a couple of hours. Bardock said. Wise decision. If you hadn't, you wouldn't be in fighting shape today. We'll just do warm-ups this morning. Hi. They went down to the tournament grounds and did warm-ups. When they had finished that and breakfast, the tournament was about to begin. Will the contestants Bardock and Caleb please step down into the ring? Caleb cracked his neck. Bardock cracked his knuckles and they flew down to the ring, landing on the ring floor. The announcer had gotten over his shock of what they could do and said, sweating slightly, and baking away, match 1, begin. He ran behind the wall, only poking his head around it to watch. The end. Thanks for watching.